Thanks for coming, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, dude.
So, yeah, man, I've been doing this for like 2 months.
Yeah.
My grandmother passed away on my 40th birthday at 100, right?
Wow.
And I had some conversations with her in the past, and I wish I would have recorded them. Asking about where she grew up, where her parents were from. They're from the north of France, and all this stuff that I wish I could have gotten more out of it and record it. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, I need to start chronicling friends, family, or things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
I appreciate you coming, man.
No, you know what? I'm even more excited to be here.
Oh, awesome, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a bit about you. What got you to where you are at the Thompson?
Yeah.
And a little bit about your experience with what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, it's a really long story, so I'll try to keep it as short as I can. I thought for a really long time that I'd be doing something else with my life. It was food and beverage is something that I've been doing since I was 14. I started at Arby's.
Nice.
So if you ask me how I got from Arby's to here, that story is way too long.
Chick-fil-A, me, man.
Hey, you know what? It's a good place to start. Yeah. But let's skip to the first fine dining. Well, this first beverage job that I got that was really instrumental. I worked for a World of Beer in downtown St. Pete. And what I realized was there was an infinite amount of information in regards to beer, right? There were so many different styles, so much history, and that intrigued me a lot, right? So then I start really diving into beer and how it's produced and who's important and what's important and where is it going. I became the product manager there. So I controlled the programming because I brought in all the barrels, all the beer, and I decided what went where. When we did events, we did so many cool things that had to do with the history of beer. So I left there to go to really fine dining. I wanted to understand what that was about.
Right.
So I worked at a place called Farm Table Kitchen in St. Pete as well.
Okay.
It was a Michael Mina restaurant at the time. I think it's actually closed now, which is sad because it was a really important place at the time for me.
Yeah.
And that was run by the beverage program for the company was run by a gentleman named Rajat Par. Rajat Par is now, master sommelier, but he doesn't really do that anymore. He's really focused on making wine, making an impact in how wine's produced, and really a character, a great story to tell if you ever want to dig in on him. He's a really great one.
Yeah, for sure.
So then there was a shift, right? I was the expo buster. They didn't really have a delineation of those duties, so I did everything except for talk to tables. And what I started to understand was the people who talked to tables were the ones that knew about wine.
Right.
And that's where the money was. So that's where I wanted to be. So I started buying books and buying wine and trying to understand what is so important about this.
Right.
That's it, man. That's the black hole.
That's the thing for me, man. Is like I've always had this, this interest in wine, but never pursued it to that extent. But my mom's side's French. I've got friends who are big into wine, and it's an interesting topic because it's like it's so you can dive deep into it, man.
Endless.
Right.
Endless.
So you got bit by the bug. You got interested, and you started reading, and then explain the process to becoming a sommelier as far as that goes.
Yeah. So I had the pleasure of working at a place called 60 Vines. 60 Vines. The first location is in Plano.
Okay.
Part of our training process was that we got to take the level 1 at the end of our training, and in doing that, I was like, you know what, I could probably take this a little bit further. So then during COVID, I studied for my WSET, which is a different body. It's not through the Court of Master Sommeliers, right? It's through the Wine and Spirits Education Trust based out of London. I studied for my level 3 during COVID. So that was for me kind of the marking point in my career.
Yeah.
I was already really deep into wine, and to be frank, certification means very little.
You just needed that piece of paper, right?
You don't really, because I know when I'm speaking to someone about wine, I don't need to know what their certifications are. I can tell based off how excited they are, right?
Yeah.
How they're speaking about it, who they're speaking about, how much they know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's the more exciting part. It's like a degree, man. Some
Yeah.
people get it, some people don't.
Yeah.
But when you get into the career, no one asks you about it.
Yeah, and that's the same with a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah.
I got sucked into a Facebook comment debate. You know what I'm talking about? You get sucked into those.
Yeah, all the time.
Somebody was like saying, "Oh, are you a doctor?" You know, and man, I've seen people like there's this guy on YouTube of More Plates, More Dates. He's like this guy who knows so much about like guys who do TRT and like big into leg weightlifting. He was on Rogan, so he's got that information, but he's not an endocrinologist. He doesn't have that, but he knows more than almost probably any doctor that has it. So that has a degree. So I agree, man. I think if you have that passion and the desire in any field to like, you know, if you're buying books and you're studying on COVID and during COVID on your own and you're diving deep, with or without that piece of paper, you can probably get that information.
100%, man. 100%. And that's, you know, I tell the same thing. I'm lucky to have a team now that I get to work with on a pretty regular basis. And, you know, it's really the best part of my job is trying to inspire other people to try and learn more in any direction. Doesn't matter which way they want to go. If it's, do you want to learn more about hospitality? You want to learn more about wine? You want to learn more about food? Let's figure out what interests you and let's push you.
Yeah.
Right. So right now, my managers are all reading Unreasonable Hospitality. It just came out, I don't know, back into 2022 or beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. It's written by the gentleman who owned and operated for a pretty long time 11 Madison Park, and their strategy from going from the 50th best restaurant in the world, which is not a bad place to be,
right,
to the first. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. Brilliant.
What's the book called?
Unreasonable Hospitality.
Unreasonable Hospitality. That sounds like a good read.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. Well, so it takes the hospitality, which I know that's not what we're talking about exactly today, but in a way we are, right?
For sure, yeah.
It takes the hospitality of it takes the spirit of hospitality and kind of paints the entire world with it, right? So every industry that you want to, it helps you understand, like, this is what it is.
Right.
What getting people to know that you care about them is the secret to all business success. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. My cousin went to the hoteliering school in Geneva where he lives, and it's next level. Like to truly care for to bring it to that next level to make people be like, well, I feel like I'm at home here. You know, like those little differences. You know, and that's what people pay for when they go to a nice restaurant or a nice hotel. It's like 100%. It's that service for sure. It's
the detail.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the fact that I know that you're a musician now.
Yeah.
If I ever run into you, you come into the hotel or you come to a restaurant that I'm working at, it's my responsibility as someone that has that information to share with the rest of the team so they can find a way to make an impact that's going to feel big to you. And now the fact that I know you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And what, like, all that stuff's important.
That's great.
So
that's cool. So you went to, you were, same thing in music. We have like different certifications for conservatory exams.
Sure, yeah.
And so I know that the sommelier, the one in the States is called.
Yes, that's the Court of Master Sommeliers.
Court of Master Sommeliers, and then there's another big one in the UK, right?
Yeah,
and it's essentially the same.
Wine and Spirits Education Trust. Well, so Wine and Spirits Education Trust feels to me more focused to the information, right? So if you want to be a beverage director, or you want to director of food and beverage, or you want to open your own restaurant, right?
Yeah.
You don't really need the service component that comes with the Court of Master. You just need the information.
Knowledge.
The Court of Master Sommeliers is meant for really the service component.
Oh,
How do you deliver wine? How do you have conversations tableside? So both of them have their advantages, right?
Right.
But for me, you know, and what I'm doing right now, I'm using more of the information from WSET.
Yeah, I was gonna say, being the food and beverage director at the Thompson Hotel, it's like how do you kind of balance the two? Because you have your knowledge in wine as well, but then you have to, like, you know, how much of you're using your sommelier skills all the time for pairings and stuff like that, but like how much of your time you're actually sommeliering? You know what I'm saying?
A lot less.
A lot less.
Yeah. So the last restaurant I worked at was a restaurant named Georgie by Curtis Stone. They've dropped the Curtis Stone as of now, but we were really focused on having a really excellent wine program as well as extraordinary food, right? So actually, Wine Spectator, right before I left, they do something called the Restaurant Awards, right? Top level that you can get is a grand award. There aren't very many. I think there's maybe state of Texas maybe has 10 or 15. Dallas itself has 1.
Oh, wow.
and we got the level just below that. So it was an award of excellence. So they call it cups. We got 2 cups instead of 3. So we wrote a really exceptional, in our opinion, wine list. And that was kind of the last bit of sommeliering that I was doing. I haven't really done it since, if I'm honest. Still a big passion, but a lot of my day is spent looking at the financials of the business,
right,
and trying to lead people. But I miss it.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why you got me in front of you now is because I want to spend a little time drinking the juice and talking about
nice,
it. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great lead into my next question, because I've got a few buddies who are big into wine,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Do you have any questions you want me to ask?"
Sure.
And one of them was pairings. So, and curating a wine list. Like, what goes into curating a wine list? Whether it's for like your average person, who's may not know too much about wine, to like someone who's like a big connoisseur, like how do you kind of?
It's an awesome question, and one that is the difference between someone that's going to be a very successful sommelier and one that's going to just buy wines that they like, right? Which is usually a recipe for disaster, because as a sommelier, you keep digging and you're finding new places that you want to drink and buy from, and you find new favorites, but you also have to sell it in a restaurant. So for me, what has always been important is building out a structure. So you return to something that is very much black and white. Excel. I put an Excel spreadsheet together. How many wines do I want? What's my core demographic? What does that price point need to be? Right. What areas do I need to hit? So is this a French restaurant? Is this an Italian restaurant?
Right.
Is it American? Do I need to be global with my wine list? How deep do I want to go? Right. So if I'm going to have 100 SKU wine list, I'm only going to have 100 bottles. I need a good portion of that to move. So 80% of that probably needs to sit between 75 and 150. That's like the sweet spot for most restaurants.
Right.
And then you can go up and down as far as you want.
Right.
But the core of your wine list needs to be the things that are going to constantly turn over.
Makes sense.
And then what do those wines need to be? So international varietals, Pinot, Cab, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Rosé, those things of that Syrah, things of that sort. So people feel comfortable when they look at the wine list. And then as you develop a business, right, and you figure out who's coming, what are they asking for, that's when you start to organically shift your wine list and refine it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And then you asked me a second question that I forgot.
As far as, I said pairings too in particular, yeah.
Pairings is always fun, right? There's 2 ways to go about it. The first way is you take a flavor and you go in the opposite direction, right? So you can always do that. Or you take a flavor and you try to turn the volume up, right? So let's say something that's super rich, right? So a lot of fat, a lot of butter. You need to go in the opposite direction. What do you need to counterbalance that? You need some acid, right? You need something bright and lively to kind of clean the palate so you can return, right? So I give you one of my favorites, champagne and French fry.
No way.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Or fried chicken, champagne, or really fatty piece of salmon and a really crisp glass of Sauvignon Blanc is great, or Chardonnay, right? All of those things have acid to counterbalance what is a very rich dish. The other way you can do that is you elevate it, right? So you take something that's sweet. For example, let's say you're doing an ice cream with honey on top, Maybe you take a glass of Sauternes that's a little bit sweeter than that, and you make that flavor even more bright.
Oh, okay.
You
So you accentuate it.
Accentuate it. But if you're gonna do that, right, what can't happen is it can't be less sweet than what you're eating.
Right.
Because then it comes across as bitter, and that's also dangerous.
That seems like it's probably the tougher one to go with.
Yeah.
If you're going with something because then you can't overdo it or underdo it. You got to be just right.
It's got to be just right.
Yeah.
It's got to be just right. So that one is a little bit more challenging. And again, you say this in restaurants as well. If you like it, that's the best pairing there is.
Right. True. Yeah.
Ultimately, would I do it? Maybe not. If I'm going to have a nice piece of white fish, I'm probably not going to drink a glass of Cab with it. But state of Texas, it's probably going to happen a lot more than you expect, right? So I'm never going to tell anyone that they're wrong. But if I have my choice, there's definitely rules to it.
Yeah, and it's a bit like cooking. Yeah, like you did, like the acidity, the basic food pairings and food is probably no different than just pairing it with the wine. You're
100%.
You're trying to complement the flavor in one way or another.
The wine's an instrument.
Yeah,
it's an instrument. I mean, speaking to music, it's something that no one wants to just hear bass when they're listening to music in their car. Right?
Yeah, right.
But you need it to balance out the rest of the rest of the pieces, right? Now, sometimes if you're having an exceptional wine, you're going to want it to be the star of the show.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people are having wine as well as food.
Right.
So it's something that you don't want to get in the way of what you're eating.
Yeah.
Because you're paying for both of them. You're not just paying for the wine.
Right. Yeah.
So
very cool, man. I got a few other questions, but I can probably ask him while you show me some of the awesome stuff you brought today.
Yeah.
So.
Well, all of these wines, I think were all gifted to me, if I'm honest.
That's great.
Which is always fun. People take a stab at what your palate is and they try to bring you something. And as a sommelier, I know that's probably always difficult. People have told me multiple times, I'm always nervous to bring you wine because I'm never quite sure. So some of these we'll be having together for the first time. I've never had them.
Very cool.
And some of them I've had and I know pretty well. So I'm going to start with really not this bottle specifically, but the varietal that changed my perspective on wine, right? So back at my restaurant in St. Pete, not mine, but the restaurant I was working in St. Pete, that really got me into wine. I was asked a question, what's like your least favorite varietal? I cannot stand Riesling, was my response. How wrong was I now when I think about it? I was massively wrong. But 2-3 weeks later, Robert revealed, which is a massive producer of Riesling, they came by, did a staff training, 14, 15, 16 different SKUs of Riesling from different areas, different single vineyards, different sweetness levels. But they didn't tell us really what we were tasting. They just said, you guys go through the lineup, let us know what you like. Right. So I'm tasting all these. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And they all tasted different. So then at the end, the sommelier at the time walks up and says, Jared, what did you think about that tasting? I was like, I'm blown away at all those wines were so different. He was like, you know what they all were? No idea. Riesling. Jaw was on the floor.
Yeah, it changed your perspective.
Because then the thing that in my mind was, my mom had a bottle of Riesling that had been in the fridge for 3 weeks that, hadn't been properly stored, that I was sneaking a sip of at 14. That's not what Riesling is. That's not what Riesling is.
Man, I thought boxed wine.
But that's what I thought it was,
right,
because you read it and you're like, Riesling, I hate that, right? And you put it away and then it's never reintroduced to you in the proper way. So really the dexterity of the wine, the ability for it to do so many different things while still remaining itself was so impressive to me that even now to this day, if I had to choose any wine, right, Riesling's way up there.
Oh, nice.
Way up there on the list. So I'm going to open it so you can try a little bit.
For sure.
I think that's important,
Do you, very cool. Do you think that, how much role do you think price plays in how good of a wine can be?
Oh, wow. That's a tricky question, man.
Because I've seen some really high rated wines, that aren't overly, overly priced, and how much of that, because I know that same thing with a lot of, like my best friend's really big into the Japanese whiskeys, for example, and those are harder to find, the Yamasakis, and I've tried it, and to me it's good, but for in cases like that, it's almost like supply and demand almost dictates what the price is in that respect, but 100%. There's less supply, so there's just a higher price.
Exactly.
How is that in the case in wine, generally speaking?
You've nailed it, man.
Yeah.
The way I describe pricing for most, and this is a generalization because there are wines that are made at scale that are expensive.
Yeah.
Right. But if you were to drop a pin in any vineyard, sorry, I'll put this back here.
Here, yeah, put it right there in the middle there. That way you can see it.
So if you were to drop a pin in any vineyard in the world, right, the closer you get to that pin, the more expensive the wine's going to be, right? So let's say I've got a push pin in the middle of Le Montrachet in Burgundy, right? Well, that's going to be a very expensive bottle of wine, But if I spread out to Chasson Montrachet, right, or I spread out even further just to Burgundy in and of itself, and I'm making the same wine, it gets less expensive the further I go out, right?
The farther you get from the center of the region,
right? Because it allows you to use more, which means the supply goes up. Right?
I see.
Right, but if let's say there's a producer making a wine from a single row,
right,
within a vineyard,
I gotcha.
That's going to be way more expensive because maybe they make 100, 200, depends on how long the row is, right? But 200, 300 bottles, right? But if they're taking an entire region or entire area, AVA, we're talking about something different,
right?
You know,
that makes sense, man. So as far as do you need to let whites breathe at all any point in time?
I mean, it depends on what it is, really.
Or how about in this case?
I think this is probably going to be ready to drink. The last I looked, it was a 2021. So this one is not. Although Riesling can go a long time, I wouldn't classify this producer as one that would live a really long time. Mm-hmm. You might hang this for 10 years and come back to it if you wanted to see. Mm-hmm. But this is an Auslese Riesling, right? So my German is horrendous, which is why I'm not even going to attempt the rest of it. But Auslese, I can say.
They can read it. It's all good.
Yeah, you can read it from there. But the Auslese Riesling has a little bit of sweetness to it. So if you're ever there's several sweetness levels or dryness levels when it comes to Riesling. But if you're ever shopping for Riesling, right, and you want to know is it sweet or not, there's two tricks. Sometimes on the back of the bottle, this one doesn't have it, but there'll be a sliding scale here that'll tell you, sweet to dry, and you can figure out where it is. The other thing is the ABV. So this one's 8%. Generally, a dry, 100% dry Riesling is going to be somewhere between 12 and 14%. So
stronger.
Closer to 12, stronger. Right.
So this is going to be more. This is going to be sweeter.
This is going to be sweeter. This is going to be less dry, sweeter. Right. So.
And then talk me through because
Yeah, man.
Swirling the wine. Talk me through first the swirling. Do we need to slur white wine?
So, yeah. I think what I would always do and suggest this to anyone is you need to set the nose. Right. So what I'll do before I swirl a wine is I'll pick it up and I'll smell it.
Okay.
Right. Because when you pick it up and you smell it, you're like, okay, I get that. When you do this, you start firing off some of the volatile compounds, which is where all the aroma is, right? So you're waking the wine up a bit, introducing that oxygen. Mm-hmm. You come back, the things that you smelled on the surface of the wine now are flying out of the glass. Mm-hmm. So it allows for your nose to kind of switch on and say, oh, there's a difference here. Yeah. Let me start to analyze all these differences.
I see.
Right? So I will always swirl and smell again. It is not how I used to do it.
Interesting.
And I'll spend some time, really just smelling the wine if I'm trying to learn about it before I let it touch the palate, because your nose is going to do 90% of the work for you.
Right.
Your mouth's just going to confirm all those things.
It makes sense.
So looking at the wine, if I didn't know what it was, but I do, right? There's like this reflective rainbow-like color on top.
Yeah.
That would tell me a little bit about the wine, right? Primarily its age, right? And then there's this white edge to it that tells me it hasn't spent a lot of time aging either, because as wines age, they do two things. They get darker. So whites go to brown, reds go to brown. So you can see all the colors from white to brown. There's gold in there. There's a little bit of that like acorn-like color, I like to call it, because of where I'm from. Anyway, we'll keep moving.
Where are you from?
I'm from Tampa, but we had this big oak tree in the neighborhood that I lived in when I was a young kid that dropped acorns everywhere. So when I see that color, that's
awesome, man. You cannot unsee
it. I can't not.
Yeah.
So that is a color for me in wine. So if I see a wine and it's got that acorn color to it, I kind of have my own number in my head of how long that wine's been.
I got it. And so that's why people are doing this, to see kind of how it kind of comes off the
how
side.
the wine behaves. So when you're holding your glass like this here, you're looking for two things. One, color concentration in the center, right? And then how far that color concentration is spread out to the edge.
I see.
Right? So the further up you go in this glass, if you're looking at it, it gets wider and clearer.
Right.
Right? Almost like water.
Yeah.
That tells you a lot about a few things. One, the varietal, the age of it. Sometimes it can tell you about alcohol structure, but that's not really something that we'll get too much into. But for me, now that I've smelled this wine, do you like pumping gas? Do you like the smell of gas?
Kind of a little bit, yeah, for sure.
This wine, immediately that's what comes to mind.
Really?
Right? Yeah. So it has that petrol thing, and petrol is a key indicator for Riesling. It's one of those things you cannot miss.
And that's a descriptive term that they use.
Petrol.
Wow. Yeah.
Petrol. Some people will say like rubber hose, right? Like fresh rubber or something like that. Some people will describe it like that. And then there's the lemon lime, like that citrus that you look for as well. And then although minerality is tough to describe how you can smell it, right? I can smell almost like this it's not quite river rock, but like ocean water, but fresh, like moving ocean water. You know what I mean? There's a saltiness to it, which to me speaks to minerality. And one thing that everyone needs to know is no matter how you describe wine, you're right. You just have to be able to understand why you smell that
and why you're using
why you're using those descriptors, because everybody's life experience is different.
Are there standard sets, like you said, petrol, like standard sets of words that like people use for, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Versus like, as a musician too, I have students that take these examinations, and
Sure.
a lot of times the person grading them will give very colorful descriptives, and
100%.
and a lot of times I've just never heard them. So there's no standards, right?
There are book descriptors for everything, right? Because you have to be able to explain to the.
Ooh, that's good.
It's good,
That's
right?
sweet. That's good.
Yeah, it's sweet, and that's what we're gonna start with that, right? Because it's like one of those. It's like dipping your toe into like perfectly
I was not expecting that.
perfectly temperatured water.
Yeah, that's
right?
good.
It's a great little foray into drinking, right? And I have a hard time with not loving wines like this. Sweet generally gets a really bad rap.
Yeah.
Because there are terrible wines that use sugar to cover up
mask the
poor
flavor.
poor winemaking. This isn't necessarily one of them.
Right.
So I don't know where we were. We were talking about the wine, and then you had a sip.
Descriptive. Yeah. Sorry, man. This is good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I would say ultimately is yes, there are book definitions for every varietal out there.
Yeah.
I think for ease of understanding, but when you start to truly understand wine, you don't need the book doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
The book shouldn't tell you, because like if you ask me Gamay, for example, which we don't have on the table, but it is one of my favorite varietals as well. Whenever I drink Gamay, specifically like really young Gamay, it reminds me of Red Drink from Great Values, Walmart.
Yeah.
But that's what I grew up with. I grew up with that drink.
Yeah.
So when I drink that wine, I taste that image right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And a lot of that can give you that nostalgia too, from from when you were a kid, or
100%.
Like the color you're talking about. Yeah.
And then understanding, okay, why is that?
Yeah.
And now if you pour a glass of Gamay for me, I'm probably going to be able to tell you exactly what it is, maybe where it came from, because I've dived into that taste memory.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that, is like how accurate can a good sommelier be with not just like the name of the grape, but like the year, like is it pretty crazy?
Yeah. So I am not a great blind taster. I'm good, but I'm not great. I've been in the presence of some great blind tasters. So I've never seen it before, but I've been to several dinners with people that have seen it before. Rajat Parr, the gentleman I spoke about earlier, is one of the great blind tasters. Yeah. But the reason is because he's constantly traveling and meeting these people and tasting the wines and tracking the weather. So he knows everything. Right. He knows what a wine should taste like year over year.
That's crazy though. There's thousands of wines. It's like trying to know, you have to not just try them all, but then try to remember and categorize
100%.
them in your mind.
Well, they say that he has a, it's what do you call
photographic memory?
Yeah, but for taste.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's photographic, but for taste.
Photographic taste.
So they say when he tastes the wine, he never forgets it.
Wow.
Never forgets. It can come back to it years later.
Yeah, I got to say this. I was going to ask this in relation to music too. I have students that come in that are just naturally gifted, that play really well and that learn really quickly. And I'd imagine the sense of smell is probably similar in that sense. It's like you can definitely train and get really good, and you can outwork anybody who's naturally gifted but doesn't work. But
sure.
But that's like people who have that natural gift and just really work really hard at developing it are probably just the next level, right?
So it's sense of smell. If you've got a natural gift for that, then that's great. But also the ability to connect your vocabulary to that sense of smell. That's the hardest part.
Yeah,
is understanding what you smell so deeply that you can then vocalize it, because it's not something that we generally talk about.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like you have to smell it and then be able to let your words come out.
That makes sense.
Which is not super easy, especially if you haven't developed that vocabulary yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier wines being masked by sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
What additives in, like, say, the wines that you brought, or wines that you consider to be good wines?
Sure.
What additives are added to those wines, if any?
Well, I mean, here's the truth that no one really wants to talk about, right? Which is these wines they're organic wines. Mm-hmm. Like they are made and they're living and they're breathing. They have organic material in them. So to make them shelf stable, because they have to cross the ocean, to get here. Most of these on the table, 3 of these on the table had to cross the ocean to get here. Mm-hmm. They'll add, sulfur, CO2, not a ton, but enough to kind of just keep
preserve it.
Yeah,
similar way to put in like jerky, like sulfites, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
exactly. They will do that, but and I'm not here to speak to if people have sulfur allergies or so. I know some feel like they are allergic to sulfites, and that may very well be true. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that works. Not a doctor, right? We had that conversation earlier. But it is just it's something that also naturally happens in wine,
right?
It happens in the vineyard. So even if you have 100% natural, organic, biodynamic produced wine, there will be sulfur in that wine. It's just unavoidable. Now, the levels at which there are sulfur much, much lower than what's going to be in these wines, but still, it's something that we're working. I'm sure they are working to figure out how to limit the usage of that through cleaner wine production and cleaner habits inside the vineyard.
Yeah,
we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, so that's usually the main one. Are there any others?
That's the main one. Yeah. I mean, sugar is really the one that I look for. There's something called super purple, right? You'll see that in super purple is one that is kind of dangerous if you ask me. Anytime you're putting color in something, that feels like a bad.
Is that like red 40? It's a coloring?
Yeah, I don't know if it has the same health impacts as red 40, but it does. It is a coloring, so they'll use it a lot. It's really prominent in Napa, if I'm honest. Yeah. And not all Napa. Please, Napa, don't come kill me. But some of the bigger
Napa,
names,
please.
which I won't name right now, right? Some of the bigger boys will add super purple to it to really get this
bright,
this really dark, rich color.
I've seen that with like Syrahs, right? Where you have that like bold coloring.
But Syrah, here's the thing about Syrah. The Syrah is a super thick-skinned grape, and it's almost black.
I see.
Right? So when it is vinifying, it will drop a lot of the color, a lot of the pigment into the wine. So if you see some of those, it is oftentimes because of how the wine grows, right? Which is super thick skin, not a lot of liquid to the skin in comparison to something like Pinot Noir, right?
Right.
Super thin skin, so you got a lot of water to skin, so you don't get a lot of transfer of color.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. That's crazy. Adding color. Huh, that's nice.
It's wine is not for me. It's always super important to know how the wine's made.
Sure.
Because that tells you a lot about how honest they're being. Honesty in winemaking is a big part. Because terroir, I'm reading a book now by Rajapar. That guy's name keeps coming up. It's dangerous, right?
He knows his stuff.
So I'm his publicist, but reading a book now. The Atlas of Taste, I believe, is the name of the book, and they're talking about what part of that book are they talking? You're gonna have to edit this one, I'm sure.
That's all good.
What are they talking about? Where was I going? Whatever, we'll skip that.
It's all good. So yeah, this is really good. I wasn't expecting the sweetness, and I'm pleasantly surprised by that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
So when you have like, you're talking about the different grape, like the Syrah grape versus like a Pinot Noir.
Sure.
What are like the main? Because like I did a bit of reading on Champagne just to refresh myself, and I didn't even know this, that there were varietals. There was a Pinot Noir grape, a Pinot Meunier grape, and a Pinot Chardonnay grape. That are used for like the majority of the champagnes. Yeah. And then they sometimes kind of blend them together or use only one grape, and that's how you get like the Blanc du Blanc and stuff. So I didn't know that. I didn't know what the name Blanc du Blanc meant. So in wines, and we'll come back to the champagne, but in wines, how are like different grapes mixed together to create wines?
Awesome question.
And what are they called?
Yeah. So we have some very famous blends, right? So Bordeaux is a blend.
I didn't know that.
So Bordeaux is a blend. There's a lot more grapes, and more grapes are being added as we speak. But there's 2 cabs in there, so Cab Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, 2 M's, Merlot and Malbec, and then Petit Verdot. Right. So those
5.
Yeah, you don't have to use them all.
Okay.
Right. You don't have to use them all, but there is so Left Bank is traditionally known for having more cab. Cab is the leading varietal. Right Bank is known for Merlot leading the varietal or leading the blend. Why is that important? It's all about the soil types.
That makes sense.
Right. It's all about the soil types. So Merlot, silky and soft, It grows a little bit better in these soils that retain a little bit more water, right? Whereas Cab needs really rocky soil to bring out its best, right? So on the left bank, you see a little bit more rocky. Right bank, you see a little softer soil. That's why you see that as a choice.
That's very cool. I used to live in Bordeaux, and we'd go to a place called Arcachon, which is near the beach. And so when it says left bank, you're talking about the left of the little crevice that's in Bordeaux on the right side of it.
You got it.
Okay, very cool.
Got it. That little inlet right there.
Yeah, that inlet. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And when you buy these wines, so essentially, if you're a connoisseur of wines, you'd know like, hey, I'm buying the left bank wine. There's a chance that these are the grapes that are going to be in there. Are there specific names that they name them, as far as you know?
No. Well, so what you're asking about the varietals that are in it?
Yeah.
So here's the thing about French wine: they don't tell you anything.
Yeah.
The expectation is
drink it.
You know.
And
you should know.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So Sancerre, that's Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
They don't tell you. They just name it after the village because you should know that.
Right.
Right. That's how they feel.
Right.
And they're not wrong. They've been making great wine for so long, and in those villages, they've been making that varietal for so long. It is synonymous in that country, right? Or in that region, they say this is what we make.
Yeah.
Right. So Burgundy, if it's white wine, Chardonnay. If it's red wine, it's Pinot Noir. Period. Unless you go down south to Beaujolais, where it's Gamay, but they don't talk about that. They actually asked them. Beaujolais at one point was a part of Burgundy. But because the varietal was different, they've kind of just separated them into their whole thing. But it's contiguous with Burgundy.
So all Burgundies are Pinot Noirs?
All red Burgundy. So if you see red wine,
Yeah.
it is Pinot Noir.
Okay, because I guess so the term is redundant, because one of my favorite wines that I got into a few years ago was a Bourgogne wine. And I would say a Pinot Noir, a Bourgogne Pinot Noir, but
You don't have to say
it's
that.
essentially synonymous.
It's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
If you say Burgundy and you pour it in a glass and it's red,
Yeah.
it's Pinot Noir.
I gotcha.
That's right.
And then same with Sauvignon Blanc. My wife's a big fan of the New Zealand varieties.
Sure.
And my best friend, we went to dinner about a year ago, and he was like flabbergasted that I never had a Sancerre before. And the fact that, because I was like, I want something like a Sauvignon Blanc. He's like, you want a Sancerre? I'm like, what's that, man? He's like, what? You've never had this? You're a French guy. You should know this. And I tried it, and like you said, it tastes a lot like a Sauvignon Blanc. It's maybe not as like zesty, maybe would be the term, but it's got a lot of the same kind of taste.
Well, so what you're talking about is the impact of climate.
Yeah,
That's what you're talking about.
Okay.
And soil. Soil, can't forget about soil. And the French call it terroir, right? So where is the place? Where is it from? What is it going through before it gets put in this bottle, right? So that zesty nature, that bell pepper, that jalapeno, that lime that you taste in New Zealand, you don't really get that in France,
right.
It's just a different style. It's still crispy, still light, still a bright wine, but in a different way.
So it's all the same. It's the same grapes, just grown in different soil.
That's
great.
it.
That's
It's
cool.
literally the exact same grape grown in different soil.
That's awesome, man. So when we compare like old wines, actually, you know what? Let's try it. Let's do another one. And
yeah, you're right. We're running out of. We have plenty of wine. Man. Yeah, we gotta talk all day. So this next one is Benoit Puligny Montrachet. So this is a white Burgundy, which is going to be Chardonnay.
Very cool.
Right? Funny story about this wine is, I was told, I don't know if this is true or not, but I was told I was the first black man to ever come directly to the vineyard to taste the winery to taste. That's what I was told.
And where's the region?
This is in the southern part of Burgundy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still part of the Côte d'Or.
Yeah.
Right. Which is where most of the high quality Burgundy comes from. Right. It's really, if you got to choose, you want to get it from one of the villages from the Côte d'Or, the Hill of Gold. Right. Excuse me. I'm gonna break the law a little bit here and put this between my legs. But these wines, man, I tell you, when I went to France, I want to say it was 2018. I went. It was about 5 weeks after I had gotten married to my wife. So God bless her. We didn't go on a honeymoon, but she let me go to France for a wine trip.
I'm sure she enjoyed it a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, she didn't get to go. It was just me. Oh, yes, no. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. Please don't judge me.
You were passionate about. You had to get this information.
Yeah, well, I was. It was 2 days before my wedding, and my rep at the time called and said, "Hey, we've got a trip to Burgundy. Or trip to France? Do you want to go?" And I said, "I absolutely want to go."
Yeah,
it's for me. really one of the trips that framed how I go about studying and how I go about training a team. I think it's so important for people to go put their feet in the ground that they're studying.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to read something, but it's really hard to understand really how close all of these places you're talking about are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to understand. And then it's also about building up that smell library. Right. So when I smell this wine, it smells like the winery. Right. It smells like the place that it comes from.
That's impressive to have that kind of memory.
But I think it would happen to anybody, if I'm honest. It's not something that you can avoid. You smell it like as soon as you walk in. It's like, wow, that is fragrant, and it doesn't leave you until you walk off the property. And every time you open a bottle from that place, it rushes straight back.
Yeah,
very interesting.
And so the difference between the as far as the grape, the Riesling that we had versus this grape, what grape is?
Well, so Riesling
excuse me.
gives a lot. It gives a lot of character to the wine. So it's not impossible to put your spin on it as a vintner, right, or a winemaker. But it is one of those wines that is very much itself, and you're going to have to kind of bend around what it's already doing. Chardonnay is kind of the antithesis of that. It is known as the winemaker's grape because what is done in the winery has a lot more to do with the finished product.
I see.
Than really, I'm not going to say any other varietal, but it's definitely one of the more malleable varietals. So you can have two people making wine from the same place. It could be the same exact grape, honestly. I know that's not exactly possible, but it could be the same exact bushel of grapes. The wine could taste completely different.
Just from the process.
Wow. Just from the process.
So the Chardonnay grape is the name of the grape,
Yep,
and the Riesling is the name of the grape as well.
Riesling is the name of the grape.
Is a grape
That's
as
correct.
Well. Okay.
Yeah. So I will try my best to only speak in varietal terms.
Okay.
But we can speak to like village as well. So I talked about when I put a pin in the middle of a vineyard, I put the pin in Les Montrachet.
Yeah.
So Les Montrachet is where this Puligny Montrachet comes from. So how they name it in France is they name it after their most famous vineyard generally, right? Okay. And in Burgundy, most times those vineyards are Grand Cru vineyards, right? So Puligny Montrachet and Chasson Montrachet, right? They share Les Montrachet as their Grand Cru. That vineyard is cut in half. Half of it's in Chasson Montrachet, half of it's in Puligny Montrachet.
Interesting.
But all of it is Chardonnay.
I got you.
All of it.
Very cool. So when you smell this, tell me what do you?
The first thing, there's a lemon quality to it, but the lemon, if you remember this wine, the lemon in this wine and the lemon in the Riesling that we had, this lemon tastes a little more ripe, right? It's not as tart and tight. Yeah. It's almost like it's perfect, like pick of the season lemon. It's right in the middle of the fairway. It hasn't turned the corner where it feels like it's overripe or starting to rot, but it isn't still like rock hard in the grocery store.
Right.
It's right there where you can juice it. You're going to get a lot of juice out of it. It's going to make great lemonade. That's what I'm getting from this.
So, so you talked about, using vocabulary words, because this is just coming right off the top of my head.
Please fire.
When I smell this compared to the last one, the adjective that comes off is more closed off or closed off.
Yeah. That's good.
And it's like round and close. Like it doesn't have that same kind of aromatics as the other one to me.
So what they say about Burgundy generally is that it is a wine life well lived ends in France. It's more specifically Burgundy, because it is one of those wines that will not show off right away. Some do, but for the most part, it can be closed down and it makes you go find it, right? But then when you have one that you figured out, and then it's very much expressive, or it's opened up and it's shown you, because these wines are super temperamental. You'll open a bottle one day, same producer, same year, same vineyard, same everything, same temperature,
right?
And it'll be closed tight. You'll open the same bottle 2 days later, wide open.
Wow.
These wines, it's like they're temperamental.
Right.
They do what they want.
It could have been a factor just how like the processing of making.
Exactly.
Like, it's the same thing with pianos. I sent students off to the piano store to go play the same model. A lot of times I lead them into like the beginner uprights, like a Yamaha U1 or something. And I'll say Yamaha store in Plano will have like 4 of the same pianos, same model.
Yeah.
all four play differently. All four sound a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be the same model, right?
Yeah, but there's that
a small difference between how the wood was cut and the wood, the exact
the reverberations that come from it. I don't know anything about that, but I bet that's probably the most interesting part of trying to find the piano for you.
Yeah.
Right? Is like which one sounds like something that I would want to play.
What plays for you.
What I would
Make
want
it
to
personal.
produce. Exactly.
Same with the wine, right?
Same with the wine. You got it.
So to me, so this is drier, right?
It is completely dry. So this wine had some residual sugar. Yeah. This one has no residual sugar.
Right. Very different.
Right. Very different wines.
Yeah. And I could see why you chose the first one first, the lighter, sweeter one, and this one first.
Yeah, because you could do sweet Riesling on either side, right? I didn't want to do it after reds. And I didn't want to do it in between white to red. So the only place for me was to start with it, but you could definitely do this at the end.
I see.
As at the end, we'll probably come back to this as like our final little swig, just to reset the palate and get us on our way. But for me, man, I think if I had to choose one wine to sit down at a dinner, and I don't know what's coming out, it's one of two things. It's champagne or it's white Burgundy. Because it's so versatile. And champagne is obviously the top because you put bubbles in something, it's going to help you clear the palate. It's going to be delicious. But if you don't have that as an option, Chardonnay, specifically white Burgundy is definitely something.
Because it's versatile.
Yeah, it can do everything.
More than like a Sauvignon Blanc, you'd say? Or?
Yeah, well, so Sauvignon Blanc won't stand up generally. Always have to say that because there's... La Doucette does a wine called Baron de L, which is it's a Sauvignon Blanc, but it's treated a lot more like you would see a Chardonnay in Burgundy treated. So a little bit more wood treatment. It is a wine meant to lay down and age. That could probably hold up just like this would.
That's what you mean by wood treatment. It stays in the cask longer.
So wood allows it adds more structure to wines, right? Adds tannin to wines, which allows for them to age a little more gracefully. No wood is going to be really clean, really bright, but also won't lay down as long. So let's say, for example, you've got a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Let's use, I want to use one that everybody will know, Oyster Bay. Let's use Oyster Bay as an example.
I like that one.
So Oyster Bay is only done in stainless steel, and it's meant to be consumed immediately. It's not meant to lay down. And if you were to lay that wine down 2-3 years, not even, it starts to tear apart. I see. Because it's not built for that.
So that helps with the shelf life of it.
100%.
And as far as the flavor, how much would you say percentage-wise of the flavor is due to what cask it's been sitting in?
It can be a lot or a little. It depends on the wood profile. So
the Oyster Bay would be probably less influenced by the flavor because it's sitting in metal, essentially.
Yeah, it's zero.
Right.
There's no transfer of flavor in metal. And the reason why I say within wood, there's a big variance there because a lot of people will use, neutralized oak, right? Or oak that's been used 5, 10, 15, 20 times, right? So it's not imparting any flavor, right? And that's more common in the new world. Or they'll use a mix of new oak and old oak, right? To get this, they still want the texture transfer, right? Because the oak, no matter what, if you put in oak, it's gonna change the texture of the wine. But if you don't want it to impart any flavor, you're gonna want something that's been used, right?
That makes sense because it's all
exactly. It's all so once the flavor transfers, it doesn't go back into the wine. It's gone. Right. So you'll see a lot more in the new world, right? California, Oregon, not so much because Oregon really replicates what they're doing in Burgundy. Yeah. But California is a big example of using a lot of new oak. That's been dialed back a lot recently because I think Californians really found California was maybe the best. For a period there when it was first opening up, one of the best wine producing regions in the world, because they had great soil type, but they were really trying to be adventurous with what they were trying to produce. You can grow anything. You can grow something on the sidewalk in California. That's how great the environment is for it. Yeah. But they were really being adventurous, but they were being inspired by the old world. So they were making really honest, really clean wines. And then the American palate shifted and they started making things that I don't think were were reflective of the place, which you could taste that. You could taste that for sure. Dude, we are jumping all over the place.
No, this is cool. So the cask, you're saying I'd imagine that if the cask is already been treated, is that what you said? A treated cask?
Well, if it's been used.
Yeah. You could get a much more consistent wine taste, right?
Yeah.
So if you're producing wine like in the old world way, and they're using new casks all the time, the variability in flavor would be huge versus like.
You'll see them use casks over and over and over and over again. As long as they're sound and they're not leaking and they will use them until they need to be retired.
Right.
So it's not unreasonable for a wine, one cask to be used, tens, maybe 20, 30, 40 times.
And as a conscious choice to say, hey, I want this to taste consistent.
100%.
So, right.
100%. There are some places that have like 100-year-old plus barrels.
Wow.
That they use.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's not uncommon at all.
So how would you describe the taste of this?
Yeah. So this wine, we bring it all back. So the thing that I always love about Burgundy is I love the acidity. I love the brightness of it. But there's always this background of like fresh baked bread, just a little bit. It almost has this like yeasty note, and that's a terrible way to describe it because it's not a very appealing word, but it's got this thing in the background that tells me that it was made. It feels like it was made with love. Fresh baked bread is like one of the best things someone can make for you.
For sure,
that's what this wine reminds me of. So that. Again, we're back to the minerality thing. You still have that minerality, and then the fruit is so pure and it's right on time. This is not, for me, a super... I wouldn't go deep with this wine, because it's one of those wines. It's very good, right? But it doesn't have a ton to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to overcomplicate it. Those three probably would be where I would stop.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I compare those two. I mean, they're both good, but the first one, the Riesling, is like, to me, it's like I could drink that like over and over and over.
Yeah, and that's what really, honestly, man, it's Riesling. It deserves its time in the sun for sure. I think, and I think people are coming around to that for sure. You want to jump into this next one?
Sure. I read about go ahead. I read about controlled regions in France, or appellation contrôlée, controlled regions.
Yep.
Versus what does that mean compared to like regions in America? I know it has something to do with the laws there, right?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it actually. So Puligny, Montrachet, Chasson, Montrachet, Burgundy as a whole, all of those belong to that body.
So they can't change.
They can't do whatever they want to do, because if they can. Actually, they can do whatever they want, but then they lose the ability to call the wine from the place that it's supposed to be from. So it becomes a vin de pays, which
wine of the country, vin du pays. Gotcha.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
Okay.
You don't want to do that because you lose all the marketing dollars.
Right.
You wouldn't want to take this wine,
change the
and
brand
change
name,
something about it,
right?
And then because you wouldn't be able to sell it for the dollar amount you can. So it's controlled by saying like, this is the brand. If you want to go outside the brand, that's fine, but you need to then rely on your style.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to name. Yeah. You can't name it in accordance with what we have decided is what this needs to be.
I see. And in California, how is that different?
Yeah. There's no rules, man.
Yeah.
Wild West, there's general rules about, labeling really, which is important. But even in California, you can put, like, let's just say there's a very popular Pinot Noir that is in almost every grocery store in the country that is 75% Pinot, and 25% Syrah.
Interesting.
But it puts Pinot Noir on the label because the legal amount is 75%.
I see.
Yeah.
That's a blend there that you call that.
It's a blend because people at that time, Pinot Noir was the top varietal, so they didn't want to say red blend because that would dilute what was really hot category, which was Pinot Noir. So that's what they went with.
So French wines are technically you're more what you're drinking, and know that it's more pure in that sense. When you buy I know this is this grape. Essentially, I know more. Okay.
And you know when it's supposed to be a blend as well.
Right.
It tells you that.
It tells you
by saying it's from this place.
Right.
It tells you that it is likely a blend. Now, even then, it doesn't necessarily have to be one. You could get champagne theoretically could be 100% of one varietal, but they're proud of that. So they'll say it has another delineation on it. So it's Blanc de Blanc or Blanc de Noir, right?
So tell me those, as far as the Blanc du Blanc is just the white is
100% Chardonnay.
100%
white
Chardonnay.
of white.
And then what about the other names? The Grand, is it not Grand Cru?
So Grand Cru is another thing. So Grand Cru is a categorization of a vineyard quality.
Okay.
Right. So Grand Cru, I think, is 3% of all production. That's actually a Burgundy thing. So that's not true. But Grand Cru, there's select vineyards that are Grand Cru vineyards that you can produce Chardonnay or Pinot Noir from.
I got
right?
you.
So if you, let's say, for example, you have on a champagne bottle label that this is Blanc de Blanc Grand Cru, right? That means that it is come from 100% Grand Cru vineyards with Chardonnay planted.
Okay.
Right. Blanc de Noir, same thing.
What's that? What would that be?
That's Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir, just only 100%. Pinot Noir. Okay.
Yes. So 100% Pinot Noir would be Blanc de Noir. So Blanc de Blanc is generally known for being like very ethereal, very bright, very like it's got a lot of energy in the wine. Whereas Blanc de Noir generally has more fruit quality, a little more structure, a little more texture, which is why they use those two varietals against each other to find the right balance in the right house style.
And they mix those together.
They can mix it. And that's so when you have a house blend, right, or a house style, they generally will take those two and say, okay, what story are we trying to tell? You know, what flavor do we want? If you want something that's going to be a little bit more, they're both food friendly, but you want something that's going to be a little more complex, you might add a little bit more Pinot Noir. If you want something that's going to be light and bright, you might add a little more Chardonnay. And then you find your litmus. And there is great Pinot Meunier out there.
Pinot what?
Pinot Meunier, which is the third varietal.
Okay. That's the third grape.
That's the third one.
Yeah.
But that's generally used as a filler, for lack of a better term. It's not, no one's out there saying that's not true. There are a couple producers out there saying we make 100% Pinot Meunier. And it's actually a pretty beautiful expression when done well. But for the most part, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are the ones that carry the wines.
And when they mix those together, is there a term or a name for those when they're mixed together? No? Okay.
No, Cuvee.
Cuvee. Okay.
Yeah,
Cuvee, you're getting a mix of them.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. In some proportion.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, so long as it comes from the Champagne region, and it's a mix of one of those three grapes from the Champagne region, you can be called a Champagne.
Yeah, and there's more varietals coming online, right? But for the most part, those three are really the ones that carry the bag in that region. So yes, it can't be Champagne anywhere else in the world. It can be made from Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, or Pinot Meunier in Sonoma, in the same exact method as they use in Champagne, but it's not Champagne. It's sparkling wine.
It'd be called Sonoma.
It'd be called Sonoma sparkling wine.
Yeah, exactly.
But what they have done is they put like method champenoise, right? So the Champagne method or method traditionnelle to tell the story of although we can't call ourselves Champagne, we're making it the same exact way.
Right. But it's pretty cool when you think about a region. Like if you say Champagne, you say you're talking about sparkling wine, a wine that's got bubbles in it, but it's like a region. It's like saying Sonoma and then assuming automatically that it's like a sparkling wine.
It's a brand name, man. It's a brand name. So really the one of the main people behind developing the brand Champagne was Madame Veuve Clicquot.
Okay.
Yeah. So that orange label, that's been since the 1800s. She was dropping that on bottles because Russian oligarchs and the English really were into champagne. The French didn't care about champagne at that time. They had no interest in it. Most of it was going overseas to the Russian oligarchs and to the English, right? So how do you get your bottle of champagne to be prized? Put a damn label on it.
Yeah, make it bright and orange.
Make it bright and orange and say, oh, that's the stuff that's really good. So, and then if you really, like, that's another interesting book. I think it's Widow Clicquot. You can read her whole story.
Widow Clicquot?
Yeah, that book is awesome. It tells you kind of her story, and it also shows how interconnected Champagne as a region is,
Does Champagne make like non-sparkling? They make wines? Okay.
Yeah, they make wine too.
That's gonna be kind of confusing, right?
It's also, it's also really good sometimes. Yeah,
okay.
they will make still wine, but why would you?
Right.
Why would you when it's that great?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even bother.
Right.
To be honest.
They just make it out, and people make it on their own vineyard just to taste it, for themselves, probably.
Yeah.
More
So
than
I've actually never seen it on a shelf in a wine store, but I have had it on the properties before. So a lot of the reason why they'll make still specifically red wines is sometimes when they're making a rosé champagne, they'll take still red and add it back.
Oh.
And that's where the color comes from. So a lot of times that wine is produced still really high quality, but is used to make another version of champagne.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. That was good, man. This second one was good. What are we
let's
diving
go.
into now?
So place I'm massively bullish on.
Massively bullish.
So Oregon is, for me, while I don't think it's understated anymore, I think some of the best wines in the country are being produced in Oregon right now.
Really? Oregon?
Oregon, man. Yeah, Oregon. Because Oregon, I think they are very clear on who they want to be and what story they want to tell. So what's important is like, vineyard maintenance is really important, but they want to do it as clean as possible. Right, so minimal interventional farming, dry irrigation, all of these things are conversations from the beginning, right? Which California's done in the opposite direction. California did a lot of commercial farming, not all of them, but it was widely acceptable in that area to just do as much, produce as much as you can, right? Whereas in Oregon, they started from a place of like, we're going to be the hippie winemakers, right? We're going to make wine clean and bright. It's going to be great, but we're going to worry about the vineyard health first, right? And again, not everyone was doing that, but the culture, the widely accepted culture was that.
That's
right?
very cool.
So they do a lot of them do something called no-till, right? So no-till farming, if you drive in Napa or any wine region in the world, if you drive there, right, you'll see in between the rows, if the vineyard isn't active, you'll see like this something called cover crop, right? There'll just be grass growing.
Yeah.
So right before they start season, a lot of times they'll till all that up, right? They'll pull all the grass away. It's generally to try to help avoid an increase in animal activity and bugs and all that stuff, right? So it's to keep the bottom trunk area of the vine clean, right? But what that does is that takes all the CO2 that the vine is sequestered. Sorry, don't have good podcast etiquette.
No, that's perfect.
All of the CO2 that's been sequestered by the vine, right?
Yeah.
And just releases it back into the atmosphere. What they're trying to do is no-till drops that CO2 and leaves it down there. So as we have these issues with global warming, right? They're trying to pull as much CO2 and do their part,
right,
for the most part. Which is a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful idea. And if everyone was that intentional, I think it would be a little bit easier to move the needle with that conversation.
Sure.
Not to get into the politics of it, but even still, I think what Oregon is doing, both from a wine quality perspective, but also from a, like, this is how we feel perspective, I think it's really should be commended. Yeah,
it's hard. And, at the bottom line, people start businesses because they're trying to make a buck, right?
100%.
And so when you're doing something that may hinder that buck making ability.
Sure.
I mean, it takes some balls to do that.
100%. But how they're looking at it is the same way the French are looking at it, right? Is I can make a buck today, but if I tear all of the nutrients out of the soil, I won't make a buck 20, 30 years from now.
Right. Yeah.
If I take care of the soil, I might make a slow buck now, but then when the soils are really in a good spot and I've got great farming techniques, my wine will be great, right? And then my soils will be in a good spot. So it's more about longevity, right? It's the same as your finances, right? Yes, you can try to make $1 million in the stock market on a GameStop play, right? That's possible. Or you can try to make 5 to 6% a year and be very constant about adding money into it.
Right.
And it's safer,
right?
And you get to the same end,
right?
That's what they're trying to do with their wines.
That's great. And I just smelling it without swirling it, it's got like to me it smells like it's got a bit of body, but it's got like a sweet finish at the end there. Like at the end.
Let's see if I can get there with you. You know what I think what you're smelling, because of what I just smelled, is there's sorry if you missed that, but there's a floral component to this wine. Okay. And flowers can generally finish sweet. That, like, when you finish breathing them in, that last bit that you're left with is a sweetness. Right. That might be what you're experiencing. Yeah,
at the end there. So that's so the floral aspect of it is the finish when you're smelling it.
Yeah. Well, so you have to think about how things act in nature.
Right.
Right, so when I smell a flower, the first thing that hits me might just be the fact that it's a flower, right? It's something that's living, it's green, it's herbaceous. But then at the finish, the thing that I'm left with is the sweetness, right? So people breathe in really deep, and at the end they blow it out, and they're like, "Oh wow, they smell so good." That's the sweetness at that last bit. That's the lasting impression. Whereas if it was in reverse, you'd be like, "Oh man, it's bitter." You kind of be pushed away.
That's true.
It's the last thing that you smell in a flower is the sweetness.
So let's pretend that you're you're chumming it with all the sommeliers who like know their stuff, and you're trying to you want to show off your chops, right?
Yeah.
You're smelling this wine. Pretend like I'm one of those guys. What would you tell me technically how you describe this?
You got the wrong guy for that.
That's
I'll
good.
tell you, man, I'm never big on the show off, the dunk. My friends I'll go out to dinner and they'll be like, "You have to dunk on them." I can't do it. But I will. I'll just for fun,
just to humor me.
Let's see if we can get that done.
All right, cool.
So this wine, it feels very much like the focus of the wine is no longer the fruit. The focus of the wine feels like the secondary notes. So I get a little bit of, which is uncommon for this wine, but a little bit of hay, almost like a barnyard note here. That speaks to the fact they may have used yeast that was natural to the area. So I don't know if they inoculated this wine. Tasting it, there is some wood presence there, but I don't think that the wood is where they're trying to derive most of the flavor from. Smells as though they're trying to really focus on where it's coming from. If we were to talk about fruit quality, dark cherry, really kind of moving into that cherry cola conversation without the sweetness, so like a bitter cherry.
Oh, smell it.
Maybe even moving into bright blueberry, but not super dark, rich blueberry. Maybe something that's barely ripe blueberry because it's got a good amount of acidity on it. And the wine was clearly cellared perfectly because it, although it has aged 6 years, it's in a good spot, mostly because it was at my house. So there's a dunk right there. There's a dunk for it.
Here's the next question. How are you storing your wine?
Well, so my wife and I.
That was awesome, by the way.
Thanks.
That's great. It like helped me a lot. I was like, oh, I do smell that cherry.
Yeah, well, that's the power of suggestion.
Yeah, for sure.
Is a big part of that. But my wife and I redid a house in what year was that, man? 2021, maybe. Let's just say that. And my only ask was, honey, I have all this wine. I don't want to just put an autoclave somewhere in this house. Yeah. Can we just set aside a little space for me to put a wine cellar in it? And she said yes. Nice. So in my home, I have a completely dark room. It's refrigerated to 55 degrees.
The room itself.
The room itself. Wow. So it's tiled on the floor. It's spray foam insulation in the walls, on the floor underneath it. It was built to be a wine cellar, completely dark. You can't. Unless you open the door. If you were standing in there, it'd be pitch black in there.
You just use a flashlight when you go in there?
Yeah, I just use the light on my phone to go in there. Yeah. I've got these racks that go 3 deep. They hold the bottle perfectly sideways, minimize vibration, and there's a unit in there. I want to say it's a whisper cool unit, but it keeps the room at 55 degrees, 70% humidity.
That's the perfect temperature.
That's how you want to hold any wine.
Any wine
you want to hold it at 55 degrees, 70% humidity. Humidity is important because of cork integrity, right? So you want the cork to constantly. If you squeeze this cork, it still has some structure to it.
Yeah,
it's not going to crumble. Same thing here. It's got some structure to it. It won't crumble. If you put something in a dry, cold environment, this cork will fail because it'll dry out, right? And when it dries, it shrivels, which means oxygen can pass down the side of the glass.
Yeah,
it loses its seal, and then who knows what's going to happen with the wine.
So I've got a similar story to what you're going into your mom's cellar, drinking that wine.
Yeah.
But for me, so my dad was, when we used to live in Bordeaux, then we lived in Australia. We came back to the States, and when we lived in the States, he bought like cases of, I don't know, I forget which exact Bordeaux it was, but it was an 83, and he bought cases of these 83 Bordeaux. Stored them very poorly, by the way. That's what I would like. I would sneak with my friends. I was sneaking 83 Bordeaux with my buddy. Ridiculous.
Different life, man. That's crazy.
But he stored them like terribly. They weren't stored in the cellar. They were in a closet, and it was tiled, so it was cooler, but it wasn't consistent. And the humidity too, being in Houston. And then he moved from that house to downtown Houston, and they traveled a bunch. And we tried to open them, and we still have a few that we're trying to open. And some they're pretty much all skunked and like vinegary, kind of thing. But a lot of them are, a couple of them taste okay after you let them open for like 20 or 30 minutes.
Sure.
But a lot of them went to waste because they were unfortunately stored poorly. Storage
is really the most expensive part of wine collection, right? Because if you spend all this money on wine, what's going to wind up happening is you're going to start buying more than you can consume. Right. So then you need a solution for storing it. But then once you start storing it, you're going to start liking to look at it. So then you're going to need a bigger solution to store it. Right. So that's why there's a business model built off of this. Right. There's a lot of private clubs in Dallas. There's 5570, which is run by a gentleman named Jeff Gregory. That's awesome. It's the Home Depot Lowe's conversation. He built it for women, right?
Yeah.
Men are going to store their wine there, and their wives are going to want to go there, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Whereas Graylee's is Home Depot, right?
I gotcha.
It's awesome, but it's more designed for men to hang out and drink some wine, right? It's no frills, not massive design. It's just like the wine's great, hospitality's awesome, but it's really focused on storing the wine properly,
right?
And then what's the other one? Roots and Water by a gentleman named AJ. He used to actually work for Graylee's, but he also has a really beautiful space as well. And that's kind of the middle. It feels like a club that no one knows about unless you know. And if you know, and you go.
Right.
But but all those places have millions of wine under cellar right now. Millions of dollars worth of wine under cellar.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of wine.
It's a lot of wine, man.
You got to store that properly.
It's a lot of wine.
This is good. This is like, so sorry, what grape is this again?
Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir.
So this is Pinot, and let me just check.
It's got some body, man, for Pinot Noir. It's like dry.
It's power.
It's power, yeah.
It's got power.
So especially on the finish, it's good. It's just, and I like that a lot. We had a really good Pinot at one of my best friend's bachelor party, and he had brought a bottle of wine. And we drank it for a little bit. We were eating dinner. I let my glass sit for like 30 minutes because I'd kind of forgotten about it.
Sure.
Maybe even longer. And it went from tasting like kind of similar to what this tastes like right now. It became a little less dry and so much sweeter. Like 30 minutes. It tastes like a completely different wine.
I'm glad you said this because I think white wines, while they could you can use a little bit of airtime for white wines, they don't really need it as much.
Yeah.
Because generally they don't see the same amount of oak as red wines do, right? So they're not as closed down, and oftentimes they're not left to sit in the bottle for as long. So you'll see white wines come to the market generally faster. Again, I keep using generally because it's important that it's a generalization, right?
Yeah.
To the market faster, right? So this wine has been in this bottle for 4 years, right? 4 years. It's just been waiting to be poured into a glass. So I try to use Trader Joe's flowers as a good example of red wine. When you get Trader Joe's flowers, if you're shopping properly, you're not shopping for something that's bloomed already.
Right.
You're shopping for something that's just got a bunch of buds.
That's my avocado parallel right there.
Yeah, perfect. Avocado's another good one, right? As soon as you put it in water, it doesn't open right away. That's like pulling the cork.
Right.
But you leave it, you come back 30, 40, 2 days later, and it's completely open and showing the beautiful flowers that you bought.
Right.
You had to be patient for it though. Same thing.
So how long is good amount? How long is too long when you open
too long for wine if you don't do anything to mitigate the oxygenization?
Yeah.
It's probably, it depends on the alcohol content, body of the wine, but let's say as a generalization, 2 days is probably
so that's still good. It'll still taste okay after
a
day.
You're pushing it.
Yeah.
If you shove the cork back in, it's 2 days, right? You suck You suck the air out, put it in the fridge for red wine.
Yeah.
Probably stretch it to 4 if you're lucky. If it's a big boulder shoulder wine, you might get 5 days out of it, but you're pushing it.
So what's the amount of time that you would say, again, generalizing for like a wine like this, before you would get like the most out of letting it breathe and sit open?
This one, I think you could probably drop this in a decanter and let it open for an hour, 2 hours, and be in a really good spot. It doesn't need it, right? But if you want to see the way that a wine will move over time, the arc, I would say pour yourself a glass, pour the rest in the decanter, and then come back every 15 minutes. Yeah. Because that's going to really tell you what that wine's doing. Yeah. And you'll have like this, it's like a graph, right? You'll have these points to reference back to see, has it opened? And if it goes like, if your tasting improves, and then it goes from here to here, it's probably as open as it's going to get before it starts to come back down.
Right. It's crazy because it tastes like two completely different wines.
Yeah, that's the beauty.
It's like aging a steak, right? Letting it sit in there. It's like the flavor you can get from doing that, letting it sit in there for a few days versus
you don't have to wait 45 or 100 days to do that, right? So that's a wine bottle during a dinner will change. Yeah. It'll change from when you opened it till the end. Now, how many bottles you've had or how many cocktails you had before is going to reference how much you recognize that change. Right? But it will always change. It will always change.
So what are your thoughts on this as far as the flavor?
Yeah, Oregon Pinot for me is really the one that I think we should highlight here. And Chardonnay too, which I wish I had brought one because
this is good though. This is really good. Yeah, it's getting sweeter and sweeter.
They're doing a really exceptional job of just trying to be honest with how they make the wines. Cristom is one, I wouldn't say an OG, but it's been there for a good amount of time. They're doing this wine for me. I would open this 1,000 times over. Yeah. It's not super expensive. I would say, forgive me if this is inaccurate, but I'd say it's probably somewhere between $30 and $40. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you maybe able to catch it on sale underneath that $30 mark, but the quality that you get in Oregon is it's kind of hard to match.
Man. It's really good. I mean, like I said, the Bourgogne is one of my favorite Pinots to drink. Yeah. And this is up there with it for me.
Good,
it's really good.
Well, see, these have the same longitude as this way, right? Mm-hmm. Latitudinal line. They share the same one with Burgundy. So not just this vineyard, but all of the Willamette Valley. Okay. The weather's a little bit different. It's a little bit warmer than Willamette, so the wines aren't exactly the same, and same thing, soil type's a little bit different, but they have a lot of similarities in their temperatures and their climates. So making wines the same way is pretty smart.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm gonna pop this next one.
Yeah, let's do it. What do you got?
We're making good time now. Yeah. So this is Gilles Chave Selections. This is a Côte de Rhône. Okay. So the Rhône is known for making really 3 varietals, red varietals at a really high level: Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. A Côte de Rhône is generally going to be a blend of those 3 varietals. Okay. This one, I didn't do my homework before I walked in with this one. I would venture to guess that it's got all 3 in it, and Grenache is the lead, but we'll pour it and we'll see. We'll do a little bit of the...
What's your personal favorite out of those 3?
It just depends, man. I love Grenache, but I also really love Syrah. Now, I think Syrah is because as you described Syrah earlier, it's super inky and dark. Yeah. But I've seen Syrah in cooler climates do some really beautiful things, and that's generally if it's coming from a colder place, I generally like it. Right. I just like that style of wine. The wine that's there to be chased. Yeah. I really enjoy that. So having to go find it, we'll use this one over here actually.
Okay. I studied abroad a long time ago in college, and I think it was at Châteauneuf du Pape.
Yeah, Châteauneuf,
I know it was a good vineyard. I was at the age where I just wanted to get drunk at the vineyard, so I didn't appreciate it like I would now probably.
That's I'll tell you, Châteauneuf, man, that's like the...
the OG, like the OG,
it's like
right?
Cooking.
Yeah.
It's like cooking. Chateauneuf du Pape is, there's so many different varietals that could be used. It's really, what do you want it to say? Right. It can do a lot of stuff. You can do a lot of stuff.
And that's from the same region here?
It's Chateauneuf du Pape is within the Rhône. Yeah. Okay. So it's like It's like, I want to say it's probably right in the middle of the Rhone. Yeah.
So when I smell this without the swirling, I'm not getting much like compared to like the other two. I feel like
you will though.
Yeah.
As soon as you swirl, it's going to open wide up. That barnyard that I talked about for this Cristom.
Yeah.
That is in here as well, but there's the darkness of the fruit is different.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, the fruit has kind of left the cherry realm, and it's more into like the blackberry, more ripe blueberry notes. Yeah. Right. Which is interesting because, well, it's on purpose. We're kind of moving down the scale of
less
fruit.
Less sweet.
Yeah. Well, sweet. None of these wines, and this is
or fruity should be the word.
Fruity is the word. Yeah, exactly. So the reason why people say sweet is because when we think of fruit, we think of sugar.
Right.
That's just kind of a natural connection. But sweetness, when you talk about wine, is how much sugar is remaining in it, right? Because that is a thing that happens. If all wine was dry, then it would probably be okay to say this wine is sweet because everyone knows that we're starting from a place of no sugar.
Right.
But because we have wines that do have residual sugar, that term, although it can be used, I mean, don't stop saying it if you don't want to stop saying it. But if you want to define it, it's really more about how much fruit do you smell in the nose, because that's going to tell you in your mind that it's sweet. So you just have to, and sweetness is almost only defined on the palate. Sometimes you can smell it, sometimes, but most of the time you have, even if you do smell it on the palate, you think you perceive it on the palate, you have to confirm it.
I see. It smells like a prune. Is that? I smell prune. Like,
yeah. So that's talking about fruit quality.
Yeah.
Right? That means it's riper.
Okay.
You're tasting a riper version of the fruit.
I see.
Or a dried version of the fruit.
So they'll wait for it to be. And so is that indicative of the fruit being riper when they?
Not necessarily. Well, you know what? That's not a bad question, because it could be.
Yeah.
They could have let it hang longer.
Right.
What I would say it's probably more indicative of is aging of a wine for the most part.
Okay.
It can also just be indicative of the varietals and the blend. So this, I can tell you, is probably going to be heavy Syrah. So there's Grenache in there for sure. But Syrah is probably 30% plus of this wine. I'm curious. I kind of want to look it up, but we'll come back to it if we do.
How long should we let it sit before we sip it?
I think we could let that sit for about maybe 5 minutes and come back to it.
And how long do they let, you said aging, how long do they is there a typical time frame that they let wine sit in the cask before?
Yeah, so usually, I mean, everything's kind of up to whoever's producing the wine, and it's up to the varietal. But this wine, I'd probably say maybe it spent between 6 and 12 months in a cask before it was put in bottle. That would be my guess.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's a good amount of time. It's not nothing.
Right.
There's not a ton of oak characteristic on this wine. So I would say it probably uses a blend of neutral and new, or maybe second, third use. Tough to say. But the wine feels like it's centered both with some wood characteristic and some fruit characteristic at the same time. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive when you were saying earlier about the wines that like just that they have to turn over quickly and like mass produce.
Yeah.
How they can get them when you talk about the different barrels that they use and the different grape on the different row, the fact that they can get this wine tasting the same every single time.
Yeah.
That's got to be kind of hard to do.
Yeah, it's blending,
Right.
So a lot of times they'll take individual blocks or lots, so it depends on what they want to call it, but let's just say blocks of grapes. So row by row selection or rows of grapes, and then they'll barrel them separately, right? And then when they're trying to define house style, they'll come back and they'll say, well, let's take a little bit of lot 41 and lot 40 and 10. Let's blend those all together. Let's see what happens. Because they're trying to get back to the center, right?
I see.
They're trying to get back to the center. So there's a producer in Oregon who kind of says what I said and poo-poos it, right? She makes 2 wines. Her name's Maggie Harrison. She's extraordinary person to talk to, excellent winemaker, an artist that makes wine, not a winemaker that's an artist. It's very different, right? So when she's defining her wines, she barrels everything separately. So this block it goes in a barrel and that's it. She makes 2 wines. She makes Ceres and Botanica. She makes more than that, but those are the 2 main ones. Ceres is really more about minerality, right? This is my definition. She's never defined it to me, I don't think, but it's more about the minerality. Botanica is more about the herbaceous fruit. So botanical and Ceres, that's defined that way. So when she tastes something in a barrel, she'll say that's Botanica, right? Or that's Ceres, and that's how she
categorize it. Okay,
yeah, that's how she defines it. So then there is no like this lot goes into this wine or these rows go into this wine. That's not how it works.
That's kind of cool.
Year. It is very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah,
longest tasting I've ever had,
and that's creative too.
Very much so.
Yeah,
that's why I said artist that makes wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, artist that makes wine.
Yeah, sure. That's very cool. I mean, you could essentially have if you can control it well enough to be consistent with it, you could have multiple brands for the same.
100%. 100%.
Are you familiar? I'm a big Tool fan, one of my favorite bands. And Maynard James Keenan, when the band kind of slowed down, went off and started his own vineyard called Caduceus in Arizona. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I'm not.
But I don't know if you knew anything about Arizonian wines, or if they've I know
it hasn't I haven't gotten to that. I'm still working my way through the Texas Hill Country.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to Arizona, but Arizona being where they are, I had never thought of that, but maybe where are they in Arizona?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
It's a good question, man. I've never even thought about Arizona wine.
And a lot of people didn't think it was even viable until
it doesn't feel viable,
right? And they made it work, and it's it's been a quite popular wine. So they were able to make it work. But yeah, Caduceus.
I wonder. Because here's the one thing about Arizona. They've got something that's really important in winemaking. It's called a diurnal shift. So it's the difference between your AM temperatures and your nighttime temperatures, right? Or your day temperatures and your night temperatures. So you have a very massive delta there. You're able to develop, both grow the grape and produce the sugar that's necessary and allow it to go through photosynthesis while still preserving the acidity. So that's one thing that it definitely has going for it. My only thought is 2 things. One, there's no water.
Right.
It's pretty much a big desert.
Yeah.
And then the second problem is it's really hot.
Yeah.
Really hot. So I'm intrigued. I'm going to find it. I
think there's a documentary that they did too. I think it's called Water into Wine. It was maybe 10 years ago or so that was, I think it may be on Netflix still, but yeah, that was a cool, and the only reason I followed it because I was a fan of the band.
Hey, listen, dude, however you get to something in wine, it matters.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So I don't know, I'm trying to think. So here we go. I went to Maggie, who we just spoke about recently, and we spent 6 hours tasting in her cellar. This is middle of COVID. Right. There was 4 of us plus her in the room, and we were all spread out, so it didn't feel like what it normally feels like to do that, which is very tight and close. But I'm reading a magazine 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, maybe Carmelo is on the magazine cover, and I'm reading, and her name's in the magazine because they're talking about a wine. They're talking about her winery. They're saying, oh yeah, these wines, you have to try them. So Carmelo actually got LeBron into wine. Why is Carmelo into wine? Because Steve Ballmer, is that the guy? Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
That owned the Nuggets or something like that? Yeah. He owns a winery. So when Carmelo, young guy, 19, 18, whatever, comes into the league, I'm sure at the age of 21, he received his first bottle from his boss. And he's like, oh, well, my boss must be cool. So what's this wine thing about? And that's his whole journey. And now there's so many guys in the league that look up to him when it comes to drinking wine is part of being in the NBA now.
That's crazy, huh? That's cool.
It's insane. Going from having to have uniforms when you come into the arena, having a dress code policy, to now drinking wine as your main thing that you consume it's a changing culture in the league.
It's in a good way. It's just a cross culture, which I think is everybody can do with, right?
100%. We'll come back to this. I think
Yeah.
this is
Ready? Wow.
it's just so much darker, right?
Yeah.
So much
I taste
darker.
licorice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like red licorice though, not the dark, like really dark.
Yeah.
But it comes across to me like red licorice. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that.
Well, I see people, doing that or the swirling.
It's to oxygenate the wine, right? So the goal is to pass more oxygen over to wake it up even more, right? So what you're doing here, this swirling, you're thinning the wine out, creating more surface area to get more oxygen in the wine. When you pass it across your palate, same thing. You drink it, pass that water or pass that air over top, and you try to just really wake it up on your palate. Yeah.
What about swishing in the mouth?
Swishing is more so. I swish sometimes if I'm trying to find where the tannin's coming from. So I do it a lot in blind tasting. I don't generally swish wines. I'm more of a pass. Some people swish.
That's how you would drink it normally, right?
Yeah,
so you wouldn't be doing that after every sip, right?
No, some people swish to find the tannin, right? So tannin please forgive me, I'm a little rusty, but tannin in the teeth here is more grape tannin. Tannin in the cheek is wood tannin. It's different for everybody.
So the tannin, what is the tannins exactly? Is it the residue that's built up from? So what is tannin?
Tannin is tartaric acid. So grape skins have it. Wood has it.
I see.
So if you use grape that's high in tartaric acid and wood that's high in tartaric acid, you're going to have a high tannin wine. So now it comes to
how much of it?
How much, and then the vinification process and the aging process on how soft those tannins are, right? Because just like any acid can be sharp, right?
Yeah.
But if you have the ability to control the acid and soften it, right, through aging process, through wood program, there's a lot of ways to control that. It can be. Tannin is wildly important because if you don't have tannin, you just have this wine that has no structure, has no guardrails.
Right.
It kind of just flows everywhere. If it's got tannin, it's got this real central point, and these are the soft edges that hold it in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely taste that now. I taste that now. You say acidity. I definitely taste the acidity.
Yeah.
Like, again, it also helps to use or be well versed in the descriptive words because once you're able to use that in your vocabulary,
Yep.
You're like, oh, okay, that I taste the acidity. It's like one of the main things that I do taste.
Have you swished it?
I did. Well, I at first, but now let me swish it after.
Swish it now. And tell me where all the tannin is. Where do you feel that drying out of your mouth?
Like what I feel it
in the
here.
front.
Yeah, right
Teeth.
underneath my, yeah.
Teeth and gums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and you said that would be
that teeth and gums. I forgot what I already said.
It's a great.
I think teeth and gum is grape, and side of the cheek is wood.
Wood. Yeah. Definitely. I definitely feel it more in the front. That's very cool.
So if you your mouth will work differently for everybody, right? But for me, when I taste that, I'm like, okay, I'm working with grapes that are high in tannin, right? That's important for you to know. So that's why when I said Syrah,
yeah, you're probably so now you can change your or you can guesstimate more how much is
you got it
is Syrah. How much would you say it tastes like? Pretty darn heavy to me. How much?
Yeah, I think the split. Grenache is always hard because Grenache can kind of hide in a wine like this.
Is Grenache usually what is the temperament of Grenache for the taste?
It's like a more wild version of Pinot, just to give you something to tie it to. So thin skinned grape, but it has more like of these green. It can have greener notes, right? So not all fruit like Pinot can tend to be. It can be very much fruit heavy. It has a little bit more of that like. It can have some pepper, but mostly like vegetal, not super vegetal. It's still got a lot of green or a lot of fruit berry thing going on, but it's got a little more vegetal things going on. I would say this is probably between Syrah and Mourvedre, at least 50% would be my guess. We should see.
Yeah,
I feel like we should check.
Yeah,
Let me see.
Phone, yeah.
Let me see if I can figure this out for us real quick.
Sure.
So if you don't have a vino, definitely something that's worth buying or not buying, having on your phone. Is it an app? It's an app, and it generally gives you good information on Vivino. Vivino.
Very cool.
Yeah, as I say that, I haven't signed into it in forever, so clearly I haven't been drinking enough wine. Let's see here. So we'll scan this bottle here. See what it says.
Oh, nice. Just recognizes the bottle.
Sometimes it works really well. How well this one's going to work, we're going to find out right now. We'll put it in the comments section.
I'll put it on. I'll lay it over so we can see.
We'll find that later.
Very cool. Yeah. So we're definitely we're getting heavier with the wines for sure.
So the last one I brought to tell you guys a story. So this is Eller's, the last wine we're going to have here. Go ahead and drop that in there. Perfect. So Eller's is honestly one of the great producers of Napa. Been around for forever. It's coming from St. Helena, which is the hottest single AVA in Napa Valley. AVA. So the area, the American Viticultural Area is what that's called. But it's let's see, how do I explain this in an easier way? It's a more detailed cutout of Napa, right? So when you think of Bordeaux or Burgundy, right? Bordeaux has Pomerol, right? Pomerol is within Bordeaux, but it's its own thing, right? Same thing here, right? Stag's Leap is another one in California. Sonoma Coast is another one.
Is it like a just very distinctive?
More distinct.
The most distinctive,
correct,
region, or would you say region or not region? But
well, so so that would be. I want to be as simple. I don't want to go too nerdy on you guys, but AVA it gets more and more descriptive as you go deeper.
I see.
So more and more detailed. A wine can be from California, or it can be from Napa, or it can be from St. Helena, or it can be from a single vineyard within St. Helena,
right?
Or it can be from a single block of rows within a single vineyard within St. Helena. You know,
right. Yeah.
All of that is AVA, though.
Okay, I see.
All that's AVA.
Okay, so it's like the specificity of the
correct. It's a level of specificity. That's right.
I got you.
We're gonna have some. This is Eller's 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon. So the reason why I picked this bottle from the cellar is we had this supernatural experience when we were at this vineyard, which was odd, and it didn't seem uncommon to the folks that ran the tasting room. So I'll try my best to make this brief, but we had spent 3 days in Sonoma already, done a bunch of tastings, stayed at a bunch of different vineyards, and we arrived to our first day in Napa. First day in Napa, we're staying at Eller's. We're supposed to stay there for 2 nights. They have a guest house on property. Really, honestly, awesome, beautiful vineyard, beautiful landscape, the whole thing. We arrive to the tasting room. We walk in. Everyone's busy. They're talking to other guests. Eventually, someone comes up to us and they say, "Hey, how can we help you?" I'm like, I'm Jared. We're going to be staying with you guys for a couple nights. They're like, "Oh, that's awesome." Well, the keys on the counter. You guys just go ahead back there. The keys are already on the counter. You just go through this door. It's right there. That's odd. In Napa, that does not happen.
Right. Like, go help yourself.
It's a hospitality city.
Right.
That's not how that felt. It felt like they were just like, "You guys got it. You go ahead and handle that." So my wife and I find that odd, but whatever. We got a whole day of tasting ahead of us. So we leave. We head out. We go. We hit Heights that day. We hit Hall that day. We hit Chapelet that day. We had a really full schedule. Drive back. We come back in. And my wife says to me, "Man, that was weird that they just left the key for us." I was like, "Yeah, I thought so too. That was really weird."
Yeah.
And then we move on, right? No AC. We're there in, I want to say we were there in like sometime in the summer. I don't want to define what month it was, but it was not cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty warm still. And the house was hot. You know, it's not uncommon in Napa Valley to not have central air. So we ate dinner outside instead of going in the house because we knew eventually we were going to have to. And we opened all the windows in the house to try to get some cross air.
That's the European way, man.
Hey, listen, I'm not used to it. I'm not used to it. Not built for it at all.
No, I hear you.
So we we're having our dinner, and this cat shows up. You know, it's a vineyard cat, not uncommon at all. Vineyard cats and dogs are great. They keep the rodents away and the animals away. So we were like, "Oh, wow." And this cat would not leave us alone at all. We tried to go inside the house. Cat tried to follow us into the house. Whole thing, like literally, it's like attached to us at this point. So we get in the house. Cat's not there. We decide we're gonna sleep in this back room. It's a old school shotgun house. You walk in, and you can see from the front of the house all the way to the back of the house from the front. Right. So we're sleeping back there, and sleeping is a loose term. We're definitely not sleeping. And my wife, as wives do, reaches over and smacks me. It's like slaps me on the chest. Says, Jared, I can feel your energy. Stop it. And I'm like, honey, I'm just trying. That's not me. I feel what you feel, I feel. And I've got my headphones on. I'm not even trying to think about it because I thought that I was overreacting. I get less than 30 minutes of sleep that night because it felt like there was a constant presence, right? And then the cat.
That's weird. She said that and you felt the same thing too.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Creepy. The cat is literally outside the window, meowing, like almost like it's trying to alert us to something.
Or talk to somebody or something.
Yeah, I tell you, man. Yeah, scary.
That's
anyway,
creepy, man.
All of a sudden, we hear this rustle. I hear this rustle. My wife's asleep. I hear a rustle. Cat, like jets. You can hear it. Jet. Gone. That's what keeps me up for the rest of the night. So I maybe slept 30 minutes. I wake up at like ass crack of dawn, man. 6 a.m. at the latest. Probably closer to 5:30. Make breakfast, make coffee. Pots on. I'm sitting in the front yard. And I look to my right. Dead rat at the front door. Like a present for us.
The cat.
The cat left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, nah, I'm not gonna allow this to ruin my day. We gotta stay here tonight. This is a free place. Don't think about it. Wife gets up. She's like, man, that was weird last night, huh? And I was like, absolutely. Yes, but let's not even think about it. Let's go out. We have a great day planned. First tasting of the day was Eller's, place that we were staying. First question that they ask us, how'd you sleep? But not in a how'd you sleep like normal.
Conversational.
No,
it's
it
like
was how'd you sleep as a question. Right?
What?
It was how did you sleep? Oh, well. And
so
in
how'd you sleep?
Yeah, in my mind, it was let's just say fine and move on. And my wife was not. She was curious. Had to ask.
Yeah.
Had to ask. Had to know. So she says, not very good. It felt like there was like something going on in there all night. And the guy's eyes light up like he can't wait to tell us a story, right? So he says, yeah, Eller's, it's an old property. We had a lot of things happen here. And in my mind, I'm like, Hannah, that's my wife's name. Please don't ask this man what happened here. Just don't ask him. I don't want to know.
Surely
what
she
happened?
Has, yeah.
So this guy, before we taste any wines, this guy goes in to tell us. He's like, yeah, my first day at Eller's, there's a housekeeper, a woman groundskeeper, but she does all the property. So she does the tasting room, she does the hospitality suite, she cleans, puts towels, the whole thing. She got to the door of where you guys stayed last night, the hospitality suite, and she did a quick prayer. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I've been here in Napa my whole life, so I knew she was praying, but I didn't know what she was saying. So I asked her, I said, man, why are you praying? And she says, well, there's a girl that I see here pretty often, and I just want her to know that I'm bringing you in and that there's nothing for her to worry about. And he's like, what?
Dude, no way in hell I would have stayed there knowing that.
Well, I didn't know. That's the thing. I had no idea.
You should put that on the. Let us know before we.
That should be in the small print. 100%.
This place is haunted, so then come for the wine. Come for the haunting, stay for the wine.
That's right. And honestly, like I'm so happy that I didn't know because I would not have stayed there. Just like you said, I wouldn't have stayed there.
What's this girl's story? Do you know it?
I got the whole thing. I'll give you because he did not spare a single detail.
Yeah.
Right? So out of curiosity. This guy has a friend that works for the Napa Library downtown, right? Goes to the friend and says, hey, do you know anything about the Eller's property? She's like, funny you should ask. I'm working on a piece right now. Like I'm working on pulling a bunch of information in, a research piece to talk about the history of a bunch of the wineries in Napa. Eller's is on that list. And he was like, "Oh, can I see that?" He's like, "Well, I'm not supposed to show you that yet, but yeah, sure. You're my friend. I'll show you." So while they're flipping through the pages, there's this little girl that pops up. And he's like, "What's the story here?" And, oh man, even still, I could feel it. You know, I could feel that weird energy. So she says to him, "Oh, this is one of the little girls. This is a little girl that went missing. She was part of the Ellers family that founded that property." And he was like, "Oh, she went missing. What happened?" They think that she drowned in the body of water that's behind the property at the property edge. And there's a like missing sign for her, right? So he's like, "I need a photocopy of that." So next day he goes to work, talks to this housekeeper, groundskeeper woman, says, "Hey, can you tell me what this girl looked like?" So she describes her this way. She's wearing black shoes. She's got those ruffled socks on, right? Hop sack dress, pigtails. He pulls a picture out of his bag, shows her. She quits the next day.
Oh man, that just gave me the chills.
She quits the next day. She could not. She was just like, absolutely not. Right?
But she knew, she felt a presence and she could see it. But
she could see it. She said that she could see it. Wow. That she would see the little girl around property. She didn't say that like she felt.
She didn't know the background.
She didn't know the background.
Oh, she thought it was a girl.
She knew. Yeah.
She didn't know that it was a spirit? Or?
No, she knew.
Okay.
She knew there was a spirit, but she was obviously comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Right? She was very much comfortable with it, but the fact it hit too close to home, right?
It's giving me chills, man.
Man, dude, I tell you. So then he goes on to say, you know, there's if you walk into that into the suite, right? You walk into the hospitality suite and you look straight, you can see to the room you slept in. On the right-hand side, there's doors that are locked. And I was like, I don't open doors. That's not what I do. If it doesn't feel like it, if it wasn't open, it doesn't need to be open.
Right.
So he says one of those doors has this really small, narrow, 4-foot by 2-foot walkway. It's a stairwell. And I was like, where does it go? You know, that's what my mind says. And my wife goes, where does it go? Of course.
She's the voice of reason.
She's the voice of reason. Yeah. So, it goes to where their bedroom used to be, right? So there's 2 or 3 beds up there. They've never replaced them. Don't ask me why. Never replaced them. There's still children's clothes in that space up there. I don't know this for a fact. Obviously, I've never been up there, but that's what was said, right? And there was a Thanksgiving, like a Friendsgiving thing thrown. And a bunch of sommeliers were welcomed to it, and you know, some winemakers, so on and so forth. There are 14 people or so invited to it. They've got a big dining room table in the middle of this space. And one person was late. So as happens in food and beverage, you know, you get caught with the last guest of the night, or you're just running late, or whatever the reason is. Person pulls up to the house and walks in and says, "Hey, who's messing with the lights upstairs?" "What? Huh? What are you talking about? What lights upstairs? There is no stairs." He says, "No, someone is like turning the lights on and off upstairs." And I was just, in my mind, my body is trying not to just like scream. You know, I'm just trying to not scream. I'm just sitting there in front of this man saying, like, why are you telling me all this?
Yeah.
Well, supposedly that is not an uncommon thing at this property. Supposedly they feel like she's home. That's where she lived.
Oh, dude, that's just freaky, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've told that story, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 times now.
Yeah.
Not more than that, way more than that. But every time I tell it, I can feel it again.
Yeah.
You know, I can feel it again. But it speaks to something way outside of wine, right?
Yeah.
It speaks to how like, history and wine are intertwined, and like these places that we go, these vineyards that we've gone to, they've seen wars, they've seen countless amount of death, they've seen people, like I mean, endless amounts of generations, and there's
1800s or before even then, yeah.
So like having it be a part of wine culture is not weird.
Right.
That's a reality. It's just the first time I ever was someplace where I could actually say,
well, you know, a haunted house with mixed with wine. That's like that's a movie right there.
I think I just got their people are definitely gonna start showing up. That's for sure. Because some people are into that.
Maybe staying down the road and then visiting during the day or something.
I'll tell you, no, some people are into that. Man.
Yeah, dude.
Some people are into that.
Yeah, they're into like. They have those devices that tracks spirits and all that stuff.
You know what?
I'm not that one.
That's them.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
I mean, I'm the same way, man. I don't want to do that.
But I say all that to say, and this is with love, they make some really exceptional expressions of Napa Cab, and they don't try to hide from where they are. Right? They make wines of power.
Did you stay there that night?
Absolutely not, sir. Thank you for asking that. We actually spent $600 so that we could stay somewhere else. Yeah. No, absolutely not. Because it didn't matter what it cost at that point. I could not.
No, dude.
Because I went on about my day. I went and did all my tastings everywhere else, and I could not think about anything else.
You'd be thinking about the light flickering above you too. Like,
dude, honestly, man, I couldn't even. My wife was cool with it, to be honest. My wife was cool with it, but she said, honey, if you want to go, we can go. And I was like, that's all I needed.
Thank you, honey.
I just needed the grace to allow me to bow out and still keep my manhood intact. And she was like, yeah, let's get out of here.
No, I don't know about that. I wouldn't do it either. You get no sleep again. So here's to this delicious ghost wine.
Yeah, man, ghost wine.
Cheers, yeah.
Cheers, man. We've given it plenty of time.
Yeah, it smells definitely different.
You know, one of my favorite things about Cab is, while it has power, when it's done really well, there's acid there to drive the wine across the palate. Yeah. But there's also this like really beautiful herbaceousness to it. So whenever I smell Cab, specifically Cab from a really warm place, I smell. We try. That's very important to say, to grow tomatoes. My wife and I. And when you get the first leaves of the year, those leaves are so fragrant, but they don't smell. They smell like the sweetness of tomato with a little bit of herbaceousness at the same time.
Yeah,
that is in this glass.
Really,
that's every time.
Every time. What I like about this compared to like the Syrah, I've never been a big Syrah person because it's just a lot of balls,
sure,
you know, and like it's what it feels like, almost nothing but that.
Sure.
This I like. It's almost like a blend between the Pinot and the Syrah in that this is just me. It's got like a silky kind of texture.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't taste like it's got the dry, for me, this one's got that dry finish at the end.
Yeah.
But like as you're drinking it, it's just very silky and smooth, and it's not very thick.
Inside
as I'm drinking it, in my mouth, as it goes down, it doesn't feel super thick.
You know what? That's an important distinction, because I'll tell you this, Pierre. If you're drinking Cab from California, it's unlikely that it's 100%. Very rarely is it 100% Cab. Usually there's other grapes blended in to give you that mouthfeel. Because Cab by itself is a monster.
Versus Syrah?
Syrah really depends on where it's coming from.
Okay.
You know, I would suggest to you to try to find Syrah coming from somewhere very cold. You know, so homage back to France. Try to find some Cornas. So Cornas it's Syrah. It's coming from the Rhone, but it's got this beautiful brightness to it that you won't see from a warmer climate, right? If you're buying Syrah from like California, hot area California, Central Coast California, it's not going to give you anything that's interesting. But if you can find something with great elevation, is another big one. If you can find something that's being grown way up there,
yeah,
or it's coming from a cooler climate where it's still getting what it needs to ripen fully, but it's preserving some acidity, I promise you, Syrah can do some. I would, for my personal taste, I would prefer a cold climate Syrah over Cab any day.
And generally speaking, a Cab is the bigger wine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cabs generally are bigger. So if you took a Cab and put it in an environment and you put Syrah in the same environment, generally Cab's going to come out bigger, right? But the same thing happens if you do it in a cooler climate. Cab's going to come out bigger. But I think if you can find the balance, like too hot and wines really just tell one story.
Right.
If it's too warm all the time, if you can get this really nice shift in temperature, or even if it's really hot, you can still get this background of acidity. I think it's important. There's no place in the world that's too hot. That's not true, but in the winemaking world, it's too hot. But generally, if it's really, really hot somewhere, they just go up. Right, the higher you get in altitude, the cooler it is.
Just go higher, yeah.
But you still get that super direct sunlight.
Right.
So I think of like the Andes, right? So I think of Chilean wine. I think of Argentinian wine. There are some wines being produced there that are truly exceptional. Most of them are found at altitude, really high altitude.
That makes sense. Yeah, to hit the temperature that they want to get.
Yeah.
So you think that this is not? You think this is a mix, or you can't?
Can almost guarantee it's not 100% Cab.
What would you say? Would you say it's?
It feels like there's some Merlot in this wine, And again, I don't know if we're actually ever going to be able to get. There might actually be a sell sheet or something that on this, but I'd be shocked if this was 100% Cab. There's a softness to this wine that Cab traditionally just isn't capable of, right? There's a plushness to the wine is what I should say. And then the color also speaks to the addition of a different varietal.
Something else.
Yeah.
So as far as red varieties go, you've got, so Merlot is a grape or, okay.
Grape varietal.
And it's, where would you put that as far as the realm of like body?
So Merlot, big body.
Big, more than Cab?
I wouldn't say more than Cab. They're probably in the same part of the ballpark.
Okay.
Right. But what Cab has that Merlot doesn't have a lot of is tannin. Right. So the body really it feels more plush, right? Less rigid. Because remember I talked about tannin being what kind of holds the wine in, right? Holds the structure of the wine. Merlot with less tannin is a little more like wiggly, right? When I taste in motion, right? How a wine feels. So if I'm ever describing a wine to a white wine that's sharp, I'll say it's like super linear, or it's got a lot of straight edge. It feels like it's moving one way down the palate, right? Merlot hits your palate and just goes like this and moves all around. Cab with the tannin, it goes and it sits and it still broadens a little bit, but it really flows to the back of the palate. So from a body perspective, similar, but from a concentration perspective, Cab's got more concentration generally.
Makes sense. So you've got Cab and Merlot kind of there. Then you have we'd say Syrah.
Yeah, Syrah's in that.
Below, and then Pinot below that.
Yeah, Pinot's way on the other end of the spectrum.
Way lighter and
super light, minimal body. It does have body, right? Body is necessary for a wine to be of any quality.
Right.
But it's not going to have the same level of body. No. Grenache is kind of over there near Pinot Noir as well.
Pinot Noir, okay.
Just to kind of come back to the wines that we've covered.
Right.
Cabernet Franc, right, is like actually above Cab.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right? So speaking of wines, and hopefully this may be new information for some, I hope a lot of people, because I think this is something that's really interesting about wine as you dig. But Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc are actually the two varietals that are put together to make Cabernet Sauvignon.
Oh, okay.
So Cabernet Sauvignon does not exist in nature. Didn't exist in nature.
I see.
Right. They had to create it from Cabernet Franc, right, and Sauvignon Blanc.
So they bred the vines. It's not a blending. It's a breeding.
No, it's breeding.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah. So it's wine genetics.
Yeah.
Right.
You think that probably might be the future of
people are already doing that. There's a lot that still is continuing to happen. Now, Cabernet Sauvignon has become part of our cultural vernacular, right, as a solo varietal. But people are doing that all the time. They're producing new varietals. I wouldn't say every day, but pretty consistently, and then testing them.
Right.
Say, is this a viable commercial varietal or not? And Cabernet Sauvignon just was so good that people were like, well, yeah, let's just keep bottling this. This is awesome, right? But it's truly very interesting. It's an interesting conversation to have about where wine can go as we develop a better understanding of the genetics of wine.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you can come up with the new wine that what would you say the most? Would you say Pinot Noir is the most popular red out there? What do you think is the most? It might be hard to tell. I don't know.
Well, it just depends on where you're at in the world. But I would say, with understanding that I might be wrong, Pinot Noir is probably the most popular.
Oh, that'd be my guess.
Followed closely by Cab.
Yeah,
would be my guess. And then from a white wine perspective, and in the world, we're just talking about the United States. It's Pinot and Cab, and then here, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc would be the top two. Pinot Grigio probably somewhere in there, close third. Yeah, I guess, because that's what people are drinking these days.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can find a way to get that perfect
blend
grape,
of the three or the two,
do some mad science and make something.
Well, it's not outside the realm of possibility, man. Yeah, we've developed varietals for a long time. I want you to. This is a fun exercise.
Oh yeah.
Go backwards.
Should we go back to this glass?
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna go back to this glass.
All right. So this is the Riesling we're coming back to.
Yeah, this is so. If you go to a wine dinner ever professionally, oftentimes you'll end with a wine that's white wine, just to reset the palate for the day.
Why are red grapes just so much more just ballsy and
it really comes back to the tannin. The tannin is really what drives the texture in the body, and also while sugar is universal, it's almost like the presence of sugar in those wines is much, much higher. And not almost, it's a scientific fact, right? Because if you take a white wine at 12.5% and a red wine at 14.5%, both are vinified to dry, right? That means that there was only enough sugar in here for yeast to produce 12.5% alcohol,
right?
Whereas there was 14.5% produced here, right? So generally,
more yeast,
generally, right? There are some white wines that will get up to 14%, but generally red wines can get to the top stratosphere of alcohol because they have more sugar.
That makes sense. Yeah. I wanted to say real quick, this one that we tried, the
Eller's Estate Cab.
I did the swish test on that, and it's all in the back for me. Whereas before it was, I felt it like on top of my tongue back there.
Oh, here.
Yeah, like more in the mouth before. As opposed to first, I felt it in the front of my, on the other wine.
Yeah, it's on the side of the tongue.
That's really an interesting thing, like where you get that dryness from swishing. Yeah. That's really cool.
Again, it's different. It's different for everybody, but the tactile sensation and the mapping within the mouth. All of these people that are great tasters, all they're doing is understanding the memory of this is what this means,
right? And
then taking all the information and distilling it down to say, I know that this producer makes wine this specific way,
right?
And this is what I should taste when I taste that wine.
Yeah,
and it helps them navigate.
You've got to have those points of identification. 100%. The dryness in the mouth, the color. You combine all these elements, and then boom, this is how you identify it.
It's a science.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's like playing. It's like playing Who? Is that the game?
Yeah. Process of elimination.
Where you're clicking things down.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And really, when it's really difficult, it comes down to maybe one or two things. But if you're testing for the quartermaster, you can list out 3, 4, 5 different varietals, and then you give your final. So if you miss it, if you were in the ballpark of it, right, you got close, but you misread something, they're going to give you credit and say, well, you got close.
It's the same thing. I was a geology major in college, so a big part of it, identifying certain rocks or minerals, it had to do with like the way it looked, the color, the refraction, the hardness. There's all these things, and by process of elimination, you get down the list, and before you know, identify, and you might be off by one, two to choose from, but it's the same kind of process.
Yes, it's exactly the same.
That's very cool.
Exactly the same.
As far as like sommeliers and identification of wines, like where does it go off? Because you can ferment anything, right? So is this purely fermented grapes or like rice wine, for example?
No, sake is part of it too.
Okay,
sake is a big part of it, and it's really, I've never worked in a space where Japanese cuisine was the primary driver. So you'll also find sommeliers that specialize, right,
in sake.
So there'll be sake specialists and Italian wine specialists and French wine specialists because of their work experience.
Right.
I just didn't have, for me, my sake experience is minimal because I just never was in contact with it.
Right.
Never was buying it, never was selling it. So it wasn't anything that was fresh. So I know
you're not going to go to a French restaurant and get sake, right?
it's just not happening.
Yeah, right.
It's just not happening. So for me, it was always something that was a little bit foreign. It is something that is important to learn about, if you want to well-round your career. But it's like the things that you learn in school that you don't use.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Every sommelier has their specialty, and like I know the young gentleman that took over my role at Georgie worked at a Japanese, like a sushi space before, so his sake knowledge was exceptional, and before that, an Italian space. So his Italian was great. So we were a great team because for me, France and the New World were my two primary areas of expertise.
Yeah.
Whereas he was, sake and Italy,
Right.
which is great. Italy and Germany.
Perfect pairing, Germany.
So he knew well more than I knew about those. So having those conversations with him and learning from him while he was learning from me was always it was beautiful to see.
That's very cool. Yeah. Anything else besides wine fermented grapes or sake or rice?
Well, so a great sommelier learns about everything from a fermentation perspective. So part of a test to be certified or an advanced sommelier is cocktail knowledge as well.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
okay.
you
so you have to be able to tell whether it's what type of vodka it is, like what it's fermented
100%.
from.
Well, you don't necessarily have to know those things.
Yeah.
You should know the information, right? So
Right.
you should know if someone asks you for a wheated bourbon, you should be able to say, oh, well, we have Weller's, right, which is a wheated bourbon, right?
Right.
You need to be able to say those things. But if you don't have that information logged away, it's very, very difficult. Very difficult to do that.
Right. Interesting. So everything, any spirits, any wine,
anything produced. The focus for sommelier is always wine.
Wine, yeah.
And the service of that.
There's a Sigliere. What is the beer?
Cicerone.
Cicerone.
Yeah, Cicerone. I actually never got that certification, although it was one that interested me a lot.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it, but and World of Beer there's not that many left. I don't know if there's any left actually, but World of Beer was really big on developing people and helping them understand that beer was as diverse as wine is, because that's the truth. The beer you can go super deep with that if you wanted to, just not as much money in it.
Right.
It just isn't, because no one's paying, with the exception of a couple, paying over a couple $100 for a bottle of beer.
Right.
But yeah, Cicerones are also big. I mean, that's a very difficult certification. There's a lot of product.
It is kind of funny when you think about beer versus wine and how it's bottled.
Sure.
You think about a wine bottle, it's meant to be drank in a group, and champagne even, it's sparkling, right?
Yeah.
But you take the beer, it's like it's one bottle, it's for you to drink on your own.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it had the marketing just shifted to something more bottle oriented. It could completely change the landscape of the market.
Well, what's interesting, man, is that in Europe it's more prevalent to see larger versions of beer, right? Specifically, Belgium, Germany.
Yeah, like La Fin du Monde is, or that's Belgian style, but I love like all the Unibrew beers.
La Fin du Monde is that's
Unibrew.
Canadian.
Yeah,
right.
Unibrew.
Canada.
Yeah.
So Unibrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do Maudet as well.
Maudet and there's another one, but those are
Trois
Pistot. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Those are like intense.
Those are great. Yeah, they're great. I mean, but they're all made in the Belgian style.
Yeah.
Right. They're all made with a homage to Belgium. So I think it's really, you're right that they should be telling a story of like, we drink these together. Right. Delirium Tremens, perfect example. That beer. So Delirium Tremens, do you recognize the name? Think light blue label with a pink elephant on it. Okay. That's what the bottle looks like, right?
Well, that'll be hard to miss.
It'd be hard to miss. Hard to miss. So that beer is named after the trimmers that, if you have a bad drinking habit, if you wake up and you'll have these like shakes. Yeah, that's what it's named after. It's terrible.
Hardcore, yeah.
It's terrible, but that beer is want to say it's probably in between 9 and 12% ABV. It's up there.
Yeah.
It should be shared.
Yeah, same with La Fin du Monde. When they sell them, they're like in these bottles with the flip top or whatever.
Grolsch tops.
Grolsch top. Yeah. But I think just culturally, it's weird how we, in America, hey, you have your wine
your own.
bottles,
Yeah.
but you've got your own.
Yeah, and I wish, but that's a cultural shift that needs to take place.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In Europe, I think beer being shared is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But also, beer sizes are different in Europe too.
True.
It's
Yeah.
generally a little bit bigger. But I think it would be interesting to see if we shifted, or if the conversation shifted around beer to go more as like a we beverage than a me beverage. That'd be interesting to see,
and change the market for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you expecting from this?
I want to see how you had it first, and now you're having it at the end. I want to see how the wine has changed in your mind. I think that's really
I've had a few sips of wine. I don't drink often, so that's going to be
neither.
part of it.
Me neither. Listen, this has probably been the most fun podcast I've ever done. It's my first one, so this is perfect.
This is probably the most fun one I've done too. No offense to the other ones, but there's no wine involved in the other ones.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Oh man, completely different.
Yeah, completely different.
Oh, so the two things that pop out at me right away.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right, it's funny how these adjectives just pop in my head as soon as I do it. I don't care if it's off or on.
No, it doesn't matter.
But first, I taste bubbles. I taste effervescence, whereas before I didn't.
Funny.
Yeah, and then butter, like it tastes like butter. It's got that buttery kind of texture.
So you know why that is? That's the absence of tannin in this wine.
Okay.
So it's super soft. There's no sharpness to it.
Yeah.
So when you taste it, while it was always there, that what you're tasting right now, it's more like it's like your eyes are bulging out.
Right, because I've been drinking these that are just like super tannin-y.
Much bigger.
Right.
Much bigger wines.
Man, you just turned me on to new wine that, like, for me, it was always either Pinot Noirs or Sauvignon Blancs, but this is...
The goal is always, if a sommelier really cares about the craft, the goal is about educating in a way that makes people feel like part of the conversation when it comes to wine.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there. I wouldn't be shocked if at some point in this I misspoke about something that I said. And while it's up here, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That the wine there's so many details, right?
And it's super personal. It's like art.
Yeah,
right?
man.
It's like you like what you like.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, if I'm able to convince you that you like something that you didn't realize that you like,
right?
Great, done.
Yep.
Job well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
job well
it's like
done.
art, man. So Riesling being your favorite, right? Safe to say, or would you?
Yeah, it's at the moment I'm very much a seasonal drinker, right? So I also don't. Funny enough, for my job, I try not to drink that much because it can be a really dark path to go down if you have as much access.
Man. Yeah, you're around it all the time. I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, my wife used to work in the industry and at Ghost Bar when it was open back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, just being, and friends of ours who own bars, and the Beardens or a couple of my buddies, they own these bars. And if I was around that all the time, man.
Yeah, it's trouble. It's
being
trouble.
Up till 3 a.m. every night.
It's too much access.
Yeah,
it's too much access. So if I'm having wine, it's generally like, what am I doing? Because I want to be full experience.
Yeah.
But if you catch me on a random day, it's probably a bottle of Riesling with my wife, for sure.
All right, and this is just from a purely selfish perspective because I'm going to go out and find these. What are your favorite few Rieslings to get for like somebody who wants to delve into the world of Rieslings?
I'm going to give you two producers at two different price points. So Robert Veal Riesling, so Robertweil. That I might come before the E. Forgive me if that's how you spell it. That's a great producer. Anything from there. They have a beautiful light blue, like baby blue colored, like a Tiffany blue almost label, so it's not hard to find. And then the other is JJ Prume. So JJ Prume is one of the standard setters when it comes to Riesling production. Been in operation for a long time. It is truly exceptional, but those styles, that wine is really meant to kind of lay down and hang out for a bit to really get the full experience of a JJ Prume wine. I'd say you want to wait at least 10 years. I've had some that are 30, 40 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And when you have a red wine, it's not weird for that to go that deep, right? For that to go that long. But when you open a 1980 JJ Prume Riesling, you're just like, how is this still so alive?
Right.
Really, it's truly an impressive experience. So, but that is an experience of like someone that's twice our age that's put in the cellar and they're opening it because they're celebrating something. That's how that's happened for me.
That's the one. Okay.
Yeah, but I would say buy a case and open one the night you buy it, and then wait 5 years and wait 5 years and wait 5 years, and that's hard to do. So that's why you need to buy more wine, because then you can just the 5 years kind of stack up. Yeah,
yeah. And are those American, or are they?
Both of those are from Germany.
Germany.
Both of them
I heard
German.
the wheel name. That sounded German to me. But yeah.
So if you're gonna buy Riesling, while Germany's not the only place that makes it, they're probably making it from a. If I could make a broad statement, they're probably making it at the highest level overall.
It's cool that each country, because like when you think I'd say when you think France, you think Bordeaux. Usually, I'd say, or Champagne.
Yeah.
So when you say Germany, you think Riesling
Immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Germany is part of the Alpine countries, right? And a lot of those countries make Riesling. Riesling, Pinot Gris, Gruner Veltliner, those varietals are really Alpine varietals. They get made in other places, but when you talk about who's making the best, it's hard to go away from Germany for.
What about Italy? As far as what do they do the best? Do you think?
Wow. So Italy is difficult because they have so many varietals there,
right.
But it's probably Sangiovese.
Sangiovese. Okay, I've never had that before.
Yeah, so Sangiovese is probably what I would say is what they're doing at the highest level.
Is that a red or a white?
Red.
Red.
Yeah, red varietal.
I've had Barolo that I really liked from there.
Then you've had it.
Oh, that is a Barolo?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
There you go.
Is that just so what's the difference between a Barolo and the Sangiovese? Is it just
it's just area.
Area. So what grape is that?
What you just said.
The Barolo is the grape? Okay.
No. Sangiovese. Wait. Yeah. Sangiovese.
Okay.
Is what that is. So Barolo, Barbaresco.
Yeah.
Very close to each other.
Okay.
Use the same varietal.
And
then Super Tuscans. So Super Tuscans were the new kids, right? The bad boys in the city. What Super Tuscans did was they pretty much used Sangiovese as the cornerstone, right? As the base of the wine, and then added in international varietals. So Cabernet, Merlot, Malbec, things of that sort, right? So Sassicaia, Tignanello, Macedo, those are all Super Tuscans. So Barbera is another varietal they do very well, but Barolo Barbaresco is just Sangiovese production.
I've had a Barbera. My uncle turned me on to that one last year.
Barbera is like it's their version of Pinot, right? They're not very similar, but it's one of the lighter style wines. So I try to always tie back to a varietal that everyone will know. Barbera is very different from Pinot Noir, but when I think about an Italian, that's where you would go. Sangiovese can also be light, it's like super light, but when you're talking about Barolo Barbaresco, it's usually going to be a more structured, powerful wine.
Yeah.
I also like those as well, but Sangiovese is it's the varietal,
right?
The varietal. Yeah.
It's kind of funny, like and then I guess Spanish wines, the Rioja kind of.
Rioja, yeah.
I mean, that's their stand, the staple, right?
That's the staple, and that's Rioja is really down to oak treatment. So each level of quality really dials into the oak treatment, how long it sits in oak.
So that's a big part of the process there.
Massive part of the process.
So they tend to not use or reuse. They tend to use
fresh. Generally new oak. Yeah,
that's very cool.
And I mean, for the most part, they're using new oak, but they will use some used oak. Like if there are producers that will use fresh oak for the flavor profile, and then they'll let it sit in used oak for a short period of time. But it's got to be American though. That's the other bit.
Yeah,
which is hard.
Well, which one is this one?
Riesling.
This is the Riesling.
Right here.
Take a look at the bottle. And it's funny because American wine it's not the same. It's like American wine. If you were to say what is the quintessential American wine, it's like there's so much of it.
But I think it speaks to the American spirit, though. We're still, as far as wine culture, we're still super young, man. Like, I mean, we're just starting to figure it out.
Right.
We haven't even discovered all the places in our country where we can develop really quality wine.
Right.
We don't know all those yet because we haven't tried it everywhere yet.
Right, so, or almost so much good wine from all over the world. It's like, why try to?
Well, Michigan is starting to have its time in the sun right now. You know, Michigan is they're using their microclimate to make a lot of alpine varietals, right? So the wines of Germany and, Swiss wines, things of that sort, they're making those varietals in Michigan because temperature-wise and climate-wise is pretty similar. Mm-hmm. And some of the Riesling that's come out of Michigan has been it's been exceptional, like world-class style stuff, but we didn't even know that we could make wine there of any quality until maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Right. Well, you mentioned Texas wines, which you think when you think Texas. I mean, when I think Texas, I'm like 115 degree summers.
Yeah,
like,
Texas. I'm still trying to find the first great Texas wine. I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah.
The problem with Texas is we don't have a big enough diurnal shift, so we're not able to preserve acidity at the level that you'd need to make high quality wine.
It's just too hot all day.
It's too hot.
Yeah.
You think about the summer we just went through here in Dallas.
95 degrees at night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not a big enough delta. You need to I would say you probably need to get under 80 degrees at night for it to make any type of difference.
So New Mexico may be good, right?
Yeah. Well, New Mexico has
Arizona.
The name is is falling out of my mind now, but they make sparkling wine, this New Mexico. Gruet is the name of the producer. Yeah, so Gruet makes a sparkling wine, which is actually, pretty freaking pretty solid, man. It's pretty solid. They do a really good job of making a wine from an area that's interesting.
Yeah.
Again, who knows? Who knows? When it comes to how far they can go, there's really no way to know because it comes down to farming. It comes down to microclimate adjustments. It comes down to soil structure, and we're just starting to learn about New Mexico as a wine growing region. Same as Arizona, obviously. I just learned that today. I didn't even realize they were making wine. Wine is being made everywhere in the country.
Yeah,
really. I mean, there's from where I'm from, Florida. They're making wine. It's all terrible from what I've had.
Yeah,
I'm sure someone's making some
wine.
Oh man, I've had some wine down there that has just been absolutely horrendous. But the what keeps me going is the interest. Is like, well,
you never know.
Day,
yeah, exactly.
One day, one's gonna be great.
Someone's gonna make something amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate you coming here and getting me buzzed and making me taste awesome wine.
That's what it's all about.
And taking time away from the Cowboys game.
Yeah, luckily I'm not a Cowboys fan. The Bucs played. I'm a Tampa boy.
All right.
So I'm hoping we were up 20-10, led by a gentleman named Baker Mayfield.
That's right.
Hopefully he took us to the promised land. We'll see. But I'm a big fantasy football guy, so that's
How you doing? Doing good?
Undefeated so far this year. We're only 1 week in, but undefeated so far. Looking good.
That's a good start.
Yeah, looking good for week 2.
You get some good picks.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it. I've played without fail for about 12 years, and I've yet to win a single league.
It's hard, man. It's hard, dude. Trying to pick the players, and then they get injured. Or
the truth is, the odds. I just have to be bad.
Yeah.
I have to be bad. I've probably played in 20 to 25 leagues.
Yeah.
And I've never won one. The odds are just in my favor to win at least one.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just bad. So anyway, man, it is what it is.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. This has been awesome, man. This is good stuff, man.
Please keep the wines, man.
I know. Well,
keep them all.
This Riesling.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's fire, dude. It's so good. I'm just gonna So this is German, yeah?
This is 100% German,
dude. So good.
And honestly, it's pronunciation is the hardest part of being a sommelier. Is because everyone expects you to know how to
do
say
the accents.
everything.
You have to go. You gotta go.
Bergweiler. Yeah, and I'm just like I just don't have the German. I don't have it. French, I worked for a gentleman for a long time. He's a French guy.
Yeah,
and I picked up on how he would say things. So he would correct me in a respectful way by not telling me I'm wrong, but just saying it after I said it.
That's the French way. A French man will never have you say it the wrong way.
Yeah. So he would. So when I say it, even still, I still mess it up because I haven't worked for him maybe 2 years now. But I'll say it, and then you'll say it, and I'll be like, "Oh, I made that mistake," right? But it's important to try to, as close as we can, be respectful to the place.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you say,
Unless it's commonly used word.
Sure.
Because one thing that I don't like is when someone says tortilla. I'm like, dude, say tortilla,
man.
Don't call me Pierre. All right. If someone says my name's not Pierre, it's Pierre.
Yeah. Well, but that makes a whole lot of sense though, because although your name is French, right?
Yeah.
Your family's from France, spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
Here it's Pierre.
Exactly.
That's what it is here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a tough line, but for a sommelier, we take pride in trying to pay homage to the places that we're trying to represent, because that's what we are.
Yeah.
We're a vessel for the wine.
Sure.
And we may not get it right all the time, but if you're a good sommelier, you're focused on your guest. Right. You're not focused on showing them how much you know.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, trying to show off with the whole show off time.
It is not important. And I'll leave you with a one final story. I went to New York. Yeah, absolutely. I went to New York. Appreciate it. I went to New York in, I want to say it was February this year. And we went to Le Bernardin to eat dinner. And I've had the pleasure of tasting champagne with producers in Champagne several times. Never once have I been served champagne in a flute. Not one time. I hosted a champagne producer, and this by no means, the dinner at Le Bernardin was exceptional. Service was great. But this is one point of contention that I have with this dinner, right? So we
sorry, why not a flute?
What champagne, as a producer would tell you, right, or has told me, champagne is wine. It is not meant to go in a little bubbly flute. No, you know why flutes were produced? They were produced for Hollywood. They wanted a way to let people know that they were drinking champagne. So that became synonymous with champagne. No way. That little, because if you put it in a wine glass, the bubbles don't flow like that. It's not how it works.
So you go to Champagne and they serve it to you in a wine glass.
They'll serve it to you in a wine glass or a tulip glass, right? So a glass that has a short bottom and it kind of flows out like this and it comes back in.
Sometimes red wine, the way red wines drink with the big.
Yeah, with a big base.
Yeah, big base.
But take that and shrink it.
Okay.
Right? They will do that, but never
in a flute.
Never in a flute.
I've never seen it, but that's really interesting to know. I had no idea.
Important interruption there. But second or third course of the evening, maybe it was the first, I don't remember, but they dropped a champagne in a flute. And purely out of curiosity, understanding that they are operating at a level much higher than I ever have, I asked the question. I said, why a flute? It feels like a very intentional decision that you guys are making, because it's widely throughout the sommelier community. It's not what you do, right? The response I received was, because it's champagne, right?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, no, this was not intentional. This is just a decision that was made. So everyone at the table, all the people that I was with, they said, dude, you cannot allow this to stand. And in my mind, I was like, I must just be missing something. I must not understand something that they understand that I don't understand, right? So when it comes to being a sommelier, I think humility is wildly important. Because while I still think that they were wrong,
right,
I would never tell them that, because they have a gentleman that I don't know how involved he is now, but Aldo Somm, right? The guy is a savant when it comes to wine. He must believe in that,
right?
He must, right. or he's unaware.
Well, it's just it could be just such an innate. Like, I've never been. First of all, I'm just learning this for the first time, and I'm 40.
Yeah,
I've never been to I've been to many nice steakhouses in the area, and if ever I've ordered a glass of champagne, it's been served in a flute. Mm-mm. So I think it's this expectation.
Sure.
Right. So it's like, what's crazy is that I would much rather drink champagne out of a glass.
Yeah.
The damn holes on the flute's tiny to get my nose stuck on it.
But that's the thing.
It doesn't breathe.
You can't smell it.
Right.
And it's a wine.
Right.
So you need at least enough space so your nose can get in the glass.
Right, exactly.
If you can't do that, then we've lost the whole point.
That's like half, like you said, the majority of smell is smell.
100%.
Right, and
100%.
I think it's something you're just so used to doing. It's just we've all been raised, if ever we've been given champagne, to be like, here's a flute.
And you know
so
what?
This could be the decision that was made just purely on a pure basis of just this is how it's been.
This is Mark, and you know what? I have some level of respect for that because I didn't know until I knew, right? There was, I'll tell you, the reason why this is so firmly supplanted in my mind is what was his title? We're just gonna call him the winemaker for Krug. Came to do a staff training for me. And I went back and forth with my rep about what glassware should be on the table. They felt one, I felt another, right? And we ended up with flutes was what we put on the table because I was like, I mean, you must know what they want, I guess. The guy walked in, looked at the glassware on the table, and said to me explicitly, "We will not be tasting my champagne out of this glass." It was not optional. It was.
Was he French?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was not optional. It was, we changed this glassware. We will not be tasting it. I'll just talk about it.
Well, so he knows. He knows. I mean,
Yeah.
okay. So there's one thing, being pretentious aside. It's not. And listen, I'm French, so I know that there can be that level of pride.
Yeah.
But in this case, when you're talking about the entire experience of tasting a wine, where the more I'm learning, the more I think about it, it's like 90% smell, or like, such heavily dependent on smell, and you can't get your nose in the thing to smell it.
Yep.
Like if I had made a wine, or was like, this is my wine that I'm so proud of, you got to experience the way it's meant to be, experience the whole thing.
You got it. Yeah. So I would tell everyone, if they challenge that smell is critical, that they plug their nose and drink something.
Right. Well, that's what we tell the kids, right? Take your if they're sick or whatever.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Your olfactory is one of the most powerful senses when it comes to taste. Is the most powerful senses because we have so much more ability to decipher with our nose than we do with our mouth.
Right.
We're still learning about what all the mouth can sense, but mostly what we taste is what we've already smelled.
Right.
When something comes out and it smells great, you pretty much know it's going to taste great.
Yeah.
You already know that. It's part of how we've been developed as human beings, right? If you lose that sense, everything dulls. Right. You can still taste it a little bit. You can still feel the sensation a little bit, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And shutting down something so beautiful like champagne. Champagne is a wine with CO2 pushed into it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You got to be able to smell it.
Yeah.
You have to be.
Yeah. If especially knowing this, I'm sure if any hotel or restaurant that you've worked at where they probably all serve them in flutes, you gotta be like, no, I really want to bring this out.
I ask.
Yeah.
I'll just say, hey, I'll do this, but if you wouldn't mind, I'll have it in a wine glass.
Yeah.
And no one ever minds. I'm really big on not ever trying to minimize or make people feel like they've done something wrong.
Well, I would see the fact that I just learned this today is pretty crazy. And so if I was sitting down, at a nice restaurant and you were the sommelier and you suggested that, first of all, people might have been like, maybe people in the past have been like, what? Why would I want to drink this out of a wine glass? But now that I know that this is the way it's like, it is when you go to champagne is the way it's been drank. That's the only way I'd want to drink it. You know what I'm saying? Being educated and being open-minded to things like that is like the best thing right there.
I wouldn't have given you the option, right? If you ordered it, I would have brought you the proper glassware and you would have had to tell me I want XYZ. And then I would have told you, sir, unfortunately, we don't have that glassware in-house currently. I have this or I have XYZ, right? And I'm so firm on this because I think telling other people's stories without changing them is really important. Because then we lose the identity of what the story we're trying to tell. We make it our own. And when it comes to wine and when it comes to culture, I don't want to be someone that does that. It's not something that I find interesting, right? So when I opened this one of the restaurants that I opened, we opened with 0 flutes, not one in the whole building. And someone asked for a bottle of champagne. I brought it over, poured it into our tulip glassware. Anything else that I can provide you with this evening? No. can I have a tulip or a flute glass, please? I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, we don't carry flutes here. Long story short, they knew the owner. Went to the owner and said, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, I've never had champagne in my life, not in a flute. The owner came to me and said, we have to get flutes. And I was like, I absolutely, it's your business. I'll absolutely get the flutes. But we will still maintain the integrity of serving them in the proper glassware. And if someone asks for it, they're paying the money. So
Right.
you want it,
Right.
you can have it.
But I think it's just it's just a matter of like, I wouldn't be offended if someone said to me, the hard part is going about in a way to educate them without coming off as like, I'm right
Snobby.
and you're wrong, right? It's like, because maybe the best way is to be like, well, you know, when we do wine tastings when we do wine tastings in Champagne, we serve them, they're served in wine glasses so that you can get the full smell and fit your nose in the glass to get the full experience. And that's why we're serving it, because that's how they're served there. Maybe that'd be a way, because if I heard that, I'd be like, well, that makes sense. I don't want to drink it any other way now.
Yeah, you have to, and that you know, you speak to the storytelling component of our job in hospitality. It's important that it's not about you versus the guest. It's this is how it should be done. Let me show you why.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Tell the story, and then allow the guest to make the choice ultimately.
Right.
But most people, no one's gonna want to say, no, I know best. I'm going to do it my way.
Right.
You will still have those guests. And
you gotta be really charismatic if you're laying it on for them too nicely.
Yeah. You've got to lay it in, because no one ever comes to pay to be felt like they're being judged.
Right. Yeah.
And being someone that spends a lot of time studying and gaining knowledge, wine specifically in the United States not a lot of people know that much about wine.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of people that know that much. So the amount of time someone said something to me that has been completely wrong, right? And I don't correct them.
Right.
Because if you correct them, that is a failure of hospitality. No one comes out to be corrected. That's not what people came to dinner for.
Right.
But you try to find a way to shift them back into, well, you know, we were talking about this earlier. This is what I know, blah, blah, and then allow people to understand this is someone that I now trust.
Right.
Because if you take the chance to crush somebody, if it's a guest, they won't come back.
Right.
If it's a server, they're gonna be like, "What a jerk!"
Right.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah. I don't know. I see. I guess you gotta. I have no qualms admitting when I'm wrong or if someone's. You know what I mean? I think it comes down to ego. I think
Ego big. Yeah.
Like, if someone genuinely tells me something that is correct and I understand it, the last thing I'd want to do is not come there out of spite.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Again, it's like the hard part is, again, relaying that information without coming off as, you know what you're talking about.
It's delivery.
Right.
It's delivery, man.
Yeah.
No one wants to be embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
No one wants to be embarrassed. But it's been great, man.
Yeah, man. Cheers, brother.
Yeah,
I appreciate
really
it,
good
man.
stuff.
This has been fun. Cheers.
Yeah,
In France, when we cheers, you got to make eye contact. That's how it is. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.